Good afternoon to all of you and a very warm welcome to the grand finale of the Liveability Challenge 2023 here at Marina Bay Sands at Ecosperity Week. My name is Jessica Chiam. I'm founder and managing director of Eco Business, and I'm delighted to be your host today. We are just about to begin, so I'd like to request that all of you take your seats, turn your phones to silent, and make yourself comfortable. To kick us off today, please join me to welcome all our finalist teams who have come from across the globe to join us here today. And they are Plantish Bioscience from Israel, Tiara from Singapore, ProteoMax from Singapore, Carbex Corporation from the United States, Nika.eco from Singapore, Sustion from the United States, Seaforestation from the Philippines, and Seabound from the United Kingdom. Welcome, our finalist teams. It is such an exciting afternoon, and we're so glad to have you. The Sustainability Solutions Showdown of the Year will be starting with a video specially produced for you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I hope all of you enjoyed that wonderful video. It gives you a glimpse into the year's worth of work that went on behind the scenes to lead up to today. Once again, welcome to everyone who's joined us here in person at Marina Bay Sands, as well as virtually on our live streams on YouTube and LinkedIn. Do share with us your thoughts and comments on our platform as we go into this afternoon. The Liveability Challenge, or TLC as it is known, is presented by Temasek Foundation and organized by Eco Business. TLC is now in its 6th edition, and this is a milestone year for us, as we have more than doubled the initial funding prize of $1 million in 2018 to $2.5 million this year. It's been a huge week at Ecosperity. I was just reflecting on the opening dinner dialogue on Monday, which kicked off this week of events, where we discussed the important topic of leadership in catalyzing breakthroughs to net zero. The community of business leaders, policy leaders, investors, and civic society stakeholders gathered were invited to ruminate on what leadership means and what was the leadership we wanted to see that would help us to address the defining challenges of our time. Over the next few days, it became quite clear this week through our conversations that what we want and need is leadership to make decisions that might be a little bit more bold and riskier than usual, but that is laser focused at driving the breakthroughs to net zero that we urgently need and at achieving the sustainable development outcomes that we desire. So it's apt that we're hosting TLC here on the last day of Ecosperity. Our teams joke that we are hosting it on the last day because we saved the best for last. And after all the high-level discussions that we've had around business and investment strategy, I think this is a perfect example of how these strategies actually get executed and implemented in reality. So for in many ways, the global community gathering for this mini Davos of sustainability here in Singapore is the perfect wrap-up event. We're really proud of how this initiative has grown and have become a highlight event because TLC is ground zero for how decisions are made on where capital goes. And with this ecosystem that we've built, we are identifying, incubating, and supporting promising startups with breakthrough innovations grow from the lab into commercial markets. With the 6th year under our belt, TLC would have incubated and supported some 38 startups who have gone on to raise hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, removed or reduced tons of carbon emissions, designed out waste and enabled circularity in a wide range of industry value chains. And beyond those 38, we have also built a community of startups, investors, corporates, and experts whom we interact with daily to accelerate the allocation of capital into sustainability. So we have an exciting lineup for you today. With the help of more than 70 partner organizations this year, we received a record-breaking 600 over-entries from 82 countries in the 2 chosen tracks this year, climate change and food and nutrition. We're also, for the first time, introducing a sub-theme on ocean ecosystems under the climate track, an area that you know is underfunded. It was a tough job whistling down 600 entries into 20 in each track, after which 2 steering committees met to further rigorously assess the teams. And we've ended up with a record number of 8 finalist teams from this year from diverse geographies such as Singapore, United States, Israel, and the Philippines, with breakthrough solutions in the areas of decarbonisation, ocean ecosystem solutions, and food security. Apart from the $2 million in each track, we also have some of the most established VCs and investors as our strategic partners here today, who will be awarding investment prizes of $100,000 each. We'd like to thank these strategic partners for joining us in our mission, and they are Quest Ventures, Roma Group, TriRec, Planet Rise, and Peak Bridge, as well as SFA. And of course, to Temasek Foundation, who have really blazed a trail in terms of its thinking and also its grant funding in sustainability solutions. Your catalytic and patient capital is so crucial in playing a role in enabling breakthrough ideas become reality. So thank you for all your dedication and for walking the talk. With this, I'm delighted to introduce our judges for the grand finale this year. And we have with us James Tan, Managing Director from Quest Ventures, as well as Yoni Glickman, Managing Partner at Peak Bridge, Chian Han Lim, Deputy Chief Executive Officer at Singapore Food Agency, Anuj Mashawari, Managing Director at Head Agri-Food at Temasek International, and of course, Mr. Lim Hock Chuan, Head of Programs at Temasek Foundation, Steve Malowish, Entrepreneur Impact Investor at Planet Rise, Kathleen Tan, Director at Roma Group, as well as Mike Lim, Partner at TriRec. Now, I'm excited to be getting things going. Thank you to our finalists for kicking us off. I want to make a note also that in TLC tradition, we'll be launching our audience poll in person and virtually, where you can get to vote for your favorite team. We're now going to start off with the food and nutrition track, followed by climate change. So please join me to welcome the very first team, Plantish Bioscience from Israel. Representing them is David Hart, Senior Vice President for Business Development, featuring their solution, cultivating classical and gene-edited tomatoes for vertical farms in Singapore.
Hi, I'm David Hart, responsible for business development at Plantish Bioscience. I'd like to share with you our vision for a healthier and tastier future. Our food system is in crisis. From being able to feed so many people through extreme climate events and ensuring that the food that we eat actually nourishes us, each of these issues by itself is a big deal. Combined together, it's a perfect storm. This crisis implies that we need new food production technologies to be able to feed the world. I'm going to focus on vertical and urban farming as a solution that is insulated from severe climate events, uses significantly less water and land, allows for local food production, which can improve food and nutrition security. However, vertical farming has limitations and at the moment is limited mainly to leafy greens. We believe that genetics are the breakthrough that will allow vertical farming to unlock its full potential. We've started working on tomatoes first because they are the #1 vegetable produced and exported globally, and this production is concentrated in a handful of countries. By having a technology that allows for local, sustainable, economic production of tomatoes, that can have a huge impact in Singapore, which at the moment has negligible local production, and around the rest of the world too. Plantish is a technology engine that combines 3 disciplines in a synergistic manner. The first is metabolic engineering, which is a deep understanding of plant metabolism and physiology and the genes responsible for that. The second is computational protein design, which allows to model and optimize the structure of proteins and DNA. And the third is gene editing, or CRISPR, that allows us to make that change. What does this mean in a practical sense? These tools allow us to create new and unique plants in a fast and accurate manner. In practice, it looks like this. We start by identifying the genes that are responsible for the metabolic pathways. We then create the computational edit design, which is translated via reagents in our molecular biology lab, inserted into plants in our tissue culture lab, and then we grow plants for 1 generation and a 2nd generation to arrive at a stabilized genotype and phenotype for the desired trait. I should note that the final product does not contain any foreign DNA, and in many parts of the world, including Singapore, would be considered non-GMO. For the project in Singapore, there are 3 types of tomatoes that we're bringing. The first 2 are small stature or dwarf tomatoes. This represents a new paradigm for growing tomatoes in urban agriculture and vertical farming. By having small and fast-growing plants, they're able to be grown much denser and with multiple growing cycles per year, with the ultimate goal of being able to be cost competitive with greenhouse-grown tomatoes. The third type of tomatoes are nutrient-dense tomatoes that have enhanced phytonutrient content for cardiovascular health and for immune function. Our project has 4 steps. The first step is propagation and growing seed for the specific project in Singapore, ensuring we comply with the needed phytosanitary measures. The second step is the first round of varietal testing in situ in Singapore, where we will test techno-economic parameters like yield, quality, input use, and others. We will analyze the nutrition content of the tomatoes, and because we're talking about food, it needs to taste great. So part of the analysis is also a taste panel. The third step of our project is another round of varietal testing, focusing on those varieties from the previous step that had the most promise. In addition, we're adding a consumer outreach and insight step that should allow us to get a better understanding of consumer feelings in and around products that are gene edited. The fourth step of the project is a regulatory engagement with the GMAC and the SFA, with the ultimate goal of having regulatory approval in Singapore for our gene-edited tomato varieties. GMAC and SFA use a risk-based approach where gene editing is defined as having low risk. The team and partnership that will be doing this, on one hand, we have Plantish Bioscience. We're an Israeli biotech company with a focus on plant genetics. We have an R&D team of 10, including 7 PhDs, with vast experience in plant genetics and gene editing. We're partnered with Nika.eco in Singapore. They are a company focused on advanced agriculture and sustainability with deep know-how in high-tech and urban agriculture. By partnering, each side is able to leverage their existing infrastructure for a faster time to market. Plantish will be contributing 15 tomato varieties that have been developed over years of work, both at the Weizmann Institute of Science as well as at Plantish. Nika.eco will be contributing its existing urban agriculture production infrastructure and commercial relationships, with the goal of having an immediate go-to-market once the project is completed. When we look towards the future, there are multiple crops and multiple traits that we are working on. In addition to tomatoes, we're working on lettuce, cucumbers, strawberries, and in the future, bell peppers. And in traits such as phytonutrients for specific health indications, techno-economic traits for vertical farming, and disease resistance. All of this is part of our effort to create the technological breakthrough that will allow vertical farming to be more ubiquitous around the world. This allows for healthy, tasty, locally grown vegetables, both for Singapore and the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. It's kind of making me a little hungry, but can I invite David now on stage to take some questions from our judges? And to start us off, can I invite Hian Lim, please, to ask away?
Hello. Hello. Thank you for your very interesting presentations. So I have immediately 2 questions for you. One is that gene-edited tomato species is not new in the world. So what will you consider yourself, your solutions differentiated from the rest that is so unique that will make a global players viable? And related to that is for Singapore, what will be your scaling up and production plan in Singapore that's viable, given the various challenges of producing food in Singapore? Go ahead.
Great, thank you for the questions. So to answer your first question, we're focused on 2 things. The first are consumer traits. So our nutrient-dense tomatoes and other vegetables focus on providing benefits to consumers from the health side. And we're also focusing on the techno-economic traits for vertical farming. We believe that our CRISPR tomatoes will be able to be a viable economic solution for vertical farming and will allow vertical farming to help expand from leafy greens. To answer your second question about being able to scale up, we have a great local partner in Singapore, Nika.eco. We had the opportunity to visit their living lab yesterday, which is amazing. They're already in the market growing vegetables in urban agriculture, and we believe that the partnership, both with our varieties and with their production capability and market access, will be able to give us a faster time to market.
I think you got to be sharper to my questions, because related to that is, maybe first you tell me, based on the dwarf species, what sort of productivity are you expecting? How many tons of tomatoes per hectare are you talking about? And related to your proposed Nika.eco solutions, I'm asking you in the context of Singapore, whereby you have to do this in a scalable vertical sense. What is that solution from Nika.eco that will give you that productivity and the production volume that I'm asking?
Right, so in terms of production data, one of the things that we need to do is actually test the tomatoes here in Singapore. We've done lab scale R&D testing in terms of the yields, and we have tomato plants that grow approximately 150 to 200 grams of tomatoes per plant. It's a very different sort of paradigm where they're small, fast plants, and you have multiple plant growing cycles per year. When we do the math on paper, at least, the theory is that we can get to about 100 kilograms of tomatoes per square meter of ground real estate footprint.
Okay, 100 kilogram per meter square.
That's the goal, and that's what the Excel calculation gives us, yes.
Okay, and maybe move on to market potential and a commercialization plan. So how do you intend to differentiate these tomatoes from the world prices to be competitive, and what sort of commercialization plan and scalability you're talking about beyond Singapore?
Right, so both for Singapore and I think the rest of the world, the idea is very similar. We start from the premise that any tomatoes that would be grown in vertical farming need to be economically competitive and viable in the marketplace. And we believe that the genetics is the key to that. And by working on the genetics and with our partners, we're able to optimize, say, the triangle of genetics, engineering, and agronomy to get to tomatoes that will be economically viable.
No, I'm asking because producing fruited veg, for example, one of the key challenges is energy cost. And you have to be price competitive to the market. So you need to do some commercial analysis and sensing how to position this to be differentiated from others.
Yes, absolutely. We agree that the economics is, unit economics is the starting point.
Okay. Just the last question. When you say that the species, the growth cycle is much faster, right? How much faster compared to the normal tomato species that is not going through this gene editing process?
Right, so I don't know if you remembered, but if you saw the picture with the tomato plants, our dwarf tomatoes already had fruit on them compared to the heirloom variety that was big and bushy and a very large plant. We're talking about fruiting cycles being able to harvest within 2 months.
Thank you.
Yeah, I saw Yoni had a question earlier. Did you want to ask that, or shall we move on? Do you have a question for David as well?
No, I'm done with my question.
Okay, but other judges? Okay, Mr. Lim, go ahead.
Sorry, just a bit of details. In your vertical farming that you plan to do in Singapore, do you intend to do it under controlled weather condition or normal outdoor condition? Because that will determine your energy cost and whether it's viable.
So we're looking at a combination of vertical farming and urban farming. So the urban farming would be able to use some of the resources that are in abundance in Singapore, such as light and water. And we're in the process of building the right R&D matrix in terms of the experiments with our partner here in Singapore.
Thank you. We've finished our time for David, but we can ask him more questions later because we have to move on to the second team. Thank you so much, David. Please join me to thank him.
Thank you.
Our next team is Tiara from Singapore, and representing Tiara is Rishita Changade and Zhao Tan Xiao from Singapore. And their solution is orally delivered disease management solution for Asian sea bass.
Good day. I'm Rishita, founder at Tiara, where we are on a mission to build a future of sustainable food for 10 billion. Did you know that we already produce enough food for 10 billion people? Yet, 1 in 3 calories are lost to reasons like pests or diseases. This is worse when it comes to aquaculture, where the losses to diseases can be as high as 70 to 100%. The current approaches include antibiotics and pesticides, which are a sledgehammer approach and have undesirable consequences. Hence, we want to reduce and replace these chemicals with clean, healthy, and sustainable solutions from biotechnology. Our very first focus is aquaculture, a $280 billion industry that produces the healthiest and least wasteful animal protein. And it is the fastest growing industry in all of food production, set to feed 30% of the world population by 2030. Yet it is ridden with diseases. This is the state of art of disease management, where every single fish is removed from the water, individually injected for vaccination, allowed to recover from anesthesia, and put back in the water. This is, of course, stressful for the animals, yet it is mandatory for salmon and has led to reduction in both losses and use of antibiotics in the industry. Hence, it's a great approach for our SG's 30 by 30 goal. One of the most common species farmed in Singapore is Asian sea bass. One of the common diseases is scale drop disease caused by a virus that leads to more than 60% mortalities in 15 days. In this case, literally the scales drop off. And currently, there is no prevention or cure. So vaccination is a great approach. However, current vaccines are primarily inactivated bacterial vaccines and have some limitations for viruses. They can introduce the risk of disease because we are introducing the whole pathogen. Production of these viruses is extremely difficult as specialized salines are required. and they're not available for all the viruses. It's injection based, so only one vaccination is possible. No booster is possible. It's extremely stressful for the animals and expensive for the farmers. So today, less than only 1% of the fish are vaccinated, which leads to losses of more than $50 billion in the industry due to direct and indirect costs. So we had to reimagine this solution, and we came up with safe and scalable biologics inspired by human pharmaceuticals. Our SOLAC platform rests on three main pillars. One is the bioinformatic engine, where we design the best biologic in terms of peptide RNA or DNA. We produce these biologics using precision fermentation in GRAS-compliant food-grade microorganisms, so scale-up is inexpensive and safe. Finally, we include an oral delivery formulation that can allow us to use food as a vaccine for aquaculture. This technology is patent pending with 3 provisional patents currently filed. We have validated the SOLAC technology with shrimp guard that protects against white spot syndrome virus. This virus can kill the entire shrimp pond in less than 4 days once it strikes. With our solution, we go from less than 2% survival to more than 90% survival. This is what makes the farm go from loss-making to profit-making. Don't just take our word for it. With our results, we can see with Tiara biologics, the survival is very similar to controls which have no virus. Hence, the solution is in high demand from the industry. We may not be the only ones doing it. There are a few other startups that come up with either therapeutic solutions for shrimp or vaccines for fish which are orally delivered. This is primarily for tilapia. For Asian sea bass, no oral delivery solution is currently available, and commercially no solution is available for SDD. We come up with the first SDD guard, which is a safe biologic that both prevents and treats disease, which is powered by our SOLAC platform. We produce subunit-based vaccines that provide natural immunity to the animals, and we combine this with biologics that can naturally reduce the load of the virus in the environment. This is combined with oral delivery, which is the holy grail of all of aquaculture disease management. This is our plan for development, where we go through design, testing, and then commercialization phase. To achieve this, our ask is $1 million, for which most of it will be spent on testing and certification and talent. We cannot do this alone. And for laboratory trials, we partner with SATC at Republic Poly and Plantish. For commercial demonstrations, we partner with Grand Pacific Fisheries and One Produce suppliers. Beyond this is required for all farms in Singapore, and beyond Singapore borders, there is demand for these products. This is highly commercially feasible because it has an easy adoption where we can coat it on the feed and seamlessly integrate it into farming practices. It is easy to produce and transport. We have already scaled up to more than 300 kgs per week. That is enough to protect 200 tons of shrimp. No cold storage is required for our solution. It is a low-cost solution where, with increase in cost by less than 3%, the farmers can experience a risk reduction of more than 90%. With Tiara's AquaGuard, mass immunization is possible, where we can go from less than 1% immunization to more than 80% immunization. The global impact of our SOLAC platform goes beyond shrimp and aquaculture into large plants and animals that use the same base technology. This is powered by our dream team at Tiara, where 3 of us have startup experience, 2 of us have corporate experience in both bringing new products to agricultural markets in form of biologics and human pharmaceuticals, and 3 of us have experience in infectious diseases. We are advised, supported, and invested by the best in the industry. Hence, we invite you to make sustainability viable by bringing clean, healthy, and sustainable food for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to invite Rashita and Zhao Chan from Tiara to take some questions from the judges. And to start us off, can I invite James?
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you very much for the presentation. What are the risks associated with the oral delivery and mitigation measures, if any?
So because it's oral delivery, the amount of product that we put is in like microgram amounts. We have seen that it doesn't leach in the water. We have also seen that it gets absorbed in the animal body. And if we think about it, these are basically peptides and RNA kind of molecules which can degrade in the animal body. So compared to risks of antibiotics, like there is no bioaccumulation in that sense.
Okay. I have a follow-up question if I can.
Go ahead.
On the, how do you plan to market and distribute this to farmers given the results?
So we have 3 main channels of going to market. The very first one is like going with large influential farmers. There are farm demonstration trials are already like underway. The second is by providing it along with solutions that are provided to farmers with companies like eFishery and others in the field that have like large market reach and can reach the farmers, can bring technology to the farmers very efficiently and have experience in that. And the third is large corporates that can be either feed suppliers or animal healthcare product suppliers. And we are in discussions with multiple of these, and they're piloting our products as well.
And to add to that, it's a very urgent need, and the industry is desperately looking for an oral booster solution. So people are actually flocking over to us. It's by word of mouth. The industry is not big, so we have no problems finding clients who are interested to partner.
Okay. And yeah, like beyond shrimp, like we already have interest from sea bass and salmon industry as well.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Can you describe the regulatory pathway in general, both in Singapore and in the region, say?
Yeah, so for our first product, Shrimp Card, which is already tested, we go through, we have already discussed it with GMAC that was introduced earlier. GMAC has assessed and said that we would require approvals from SFA, and this would go in as a feed additive. Similar approaches would be applicable for other shrimp products. For new product development, there are 3 categories of regulatory approvals. First is the animal ethics approval from IACUC. The second one is again with advice from GMAC, we would go to apply for use on farms with SFA, and then the third would be registration of product with NPARCS.
We are also advised by commercial partners like Plantish. They have experience going through this process before, so the timeline is that we have provided is actually with input from these partners.
Any further questions? Henry?
Oh, I have a quick question. Is that in order to make effective these experiments, where are you going to source for your virus? Because specifically to skill drop disease.
So we don't, in our laboratories, we don't get any pathogens. All our trials are done with third party that have these viruses and have these model systems set up. In the case of Singapore, like there are experiments on STDV going on, and we would basically lean on those available options for our trials. This also ensures that all our trials are double blind. That's how all the results that we've presented until now have been.
Yeah, SDDV challenge trials have happened in Singapore. We've spoken to a few partners who've done it. Yeah.
Thank you. We still have a minute left. Anush, did you want to ask them a question?
So can you explain to me 2 questions? One is how big is the barramundi or Asian sea bass market, and what percent? And let's say assume that your product is very successful. What kind of value we are talking about? I think you used a number billion, but I wasn't able to contextualize how does that work. And also, tropical fish. What is the broader opportunity in tropical fish? If you were successful with barramundi, would you go for grouper, for other tilapia and so on and so forth? So what is the longer term impact that you can have with the platform technology that you are developing?
Thank you for the question. That actually gives us an opportunity to explain beyond this project. So this is like the first demonstration for a viral disease solution in barramundi. None exists to date. Barramundi is a relatively new fish that has been growing. So the market has been growing. in the sense like currently it has basically around 20,000 tons of production, but a lot of the diseases that are present in barramundi, for example, the viral diseases, for example, the bacterial diseases such as strep and E. vibrio, they're universal across a lot of aquaculture production, be it in European sea bass, carp, the other trout, other fishes that you mentioned. Yeah. So this is actually the platform technology where once we demonstrate the first solution, the same exact platform is applicable to the next diseases.
We chose barramundi for this competition because it's the most farmed fish in Singapore. Actually, there will be parallel efforts on other fish. Salmon is the obvious one. It's all injection-based right now. They are desperately looking for an oral booster. So the Irish salmon industry sent someone over to speak to us already.
Yeah, so we, like the trials, we already have requests to develop solutions. The entire trials for like the salmon industry and even for other diseases in sea bass are paid for. Once demonstrated, it can be applied, the same solution for the particular disease can be applied across different fish because they have the same pathogen problem.
It's truly a platform technology.
On that note, we have run out of time. Please join me to thank Tiara for their presentation. Moving on, we have ProteoMax from Singapore with the solution of enabling the manufacture of alternative proteins with the same nutritional content as animal-based products.
Hello, my name is Shane Byrne. I'm one of the co-founders of ProteoMax, and I'm going to tell you about how we're making animal-free eggs using our EpiMax biomanufacturing platform. So at ProteoMax, we are using our EpiMax platform technology to produce difficult-to-express proteins for alternative food solutions in order to address food security by enabling products that are sustainable, affordable, and scalable, as well as products that contain real animal proteins that are notoriously difficult to express. And as a demonstration of our technology's potential, we are biomanufacturing egg proteins to reconstitute eggs with the same nutritional value as natural eggs, but without the need for the chicken. There's currently a large market demand for alternative food proteins with a growing traction for alternative dairy products, and especially a growing demand for alternative egg products. And the reason for this is because nature's way of harvesting eggs is no longer sustainable. Farming requires a large amount of land space, which is not feasible for urban populations and releases significant greenhouse gases. Maintaining chickens is resource intensive, requiring lots of water and feed. And transporting eggs from farm to the market is costly, resulting in a lot of food spoilage. And furthermore, countries like Singapore are only able to produce about 30% of their eggs locally and must import the rest of them from other countries. For these reasons, others have already advanced alternative egg solutions to the market, namely just eggs and float foods. However, these products contain plant-based protein. They're comparable to a chicken egg in taste and texture, but not in the same nutritional content. And that's because they lack the major egg proteins that are bioactive and have significant health and nutritional benefits. And the reason that they lack these proteins is because these proteins, like many animal-derived proteins, are difficult to express from cells because their production results in low yields, often due to challenges in scaling up to a commercial scale bioreactor, which ultimately leads to high costs of the manufacturing process. For example, these egg proteins, production data is currently limited and often on a lab scale, but for the few of these proteins that currently are able to be manufactured, their yields are quite low, only reaching about 100 milligrams per liter, which is not commercially viable. However, at ProteoMax, we are well poised to produce these difficult to express proteins using our EpiMax platform technology that is centered on our team's discovery that cells respond to different stress conditions to regulate how they make their proteins. And one such stress is the stress of biomanufacturing and overproducing proteins from cells. So to that end, we can apply our platform to any cell type expressing any protein, which first involves measuring that cell's response to its particular production conditions, using this data to re-engineer the expression system for that protein with our proprietary software package to enable boosted protein production. And to date, we can achieve yields of at least 240% over the best commercial yields out there using current commercial technologies for improving biomanufacturing. And the EpiMax platform consists of know-how and a software package that is IP that we are licensing from MIT and the University of Albany. So to make our animal-free eggs, we start with Pichia yeast because they have a high production capacity and secrete their proteins, which simplifies downstream purification. We can then use the Pichia to produce each of the egg proteins in bioreactors, and once these egg proteins are produced, they can be marketed as nutraceuticals or fortifying agents for baking and dairy products, but we can also combine our proteins with the other components of an egg to reformulate the whole egg that tastes and has the texture of a natural egg, but also the same protein content, because our products using the EpiMax platform contain real nutrition containing real animal proteins, which is scalable locally in biomanufacturing facilities in Singapore rather than farming, which is thus a more sustainable solution. And also our products are versatile because we can now combine our proteins with healthier fats to replace the high cholesterol content of eggs. So to commercialize our product to market, we'll first make Pichia strains expressing each of the major proteins at ProteoMax, and we'll start with the predominant egg white protein and the predominant egg yolk protein, and then we can iterate this process for the other 4 major egg proteins once we scale up the first 2. We then plan to partner with Scale Up Bio as our major commercial partner for this project, and we're currently finalizing an LOI with them if we were to be awarded the TLC money. And we can combine our expertise in protein manufacturing from cells with their extensive expertise in bioprocess development to hopefully achieve at least a 2 gram per liter yield of our proteins using their 100-liter scale bioreactors in order to have a competitive cost of our product on the market. But Scale Up Bio also has access to a large ecosystem to help with the formulation of our products, namely Nourish Ingredients that has healthy fats that they produce from fermentation, and Givaudan that has extensive taste, texture, and color formulation experience. We finally are talking with Narasa for go-to-market advice and to leverage their ecosystem for prototype testing of our products with their chefs, nutritionists, and test kitchens. And as our first product, we can market our individual egg proteins as fortifying agents that other companies can purchase and use to enhance their current products on the market, which will provide us an initial revenue stream before we market our reconstituted egg product. And our products, we believe we can achieve generally recognized as safe regulatory approval from the SFA and the US FDA due to the past precedent set by the Every Company's egg white proteins. And we have a multifaceted team that is well primed to tackle this project. We have a CEO with significant startup experience who will manage our go-to-market efforts, the 3 inventors of our EpiMax platform technology, of which I will oversee the scientific direction of the project, and the 2 academic co-discoverers of the stress response system from cells. And together, we believe that we can achieve the production of difficult to express animal proteins using egg proteins as our first example product to create a new class of disruptive alternative food products that contain real nutrition, real animal proteins, but without the need for the animal. Thank you for your attention.
Much ProteoMax. Can we now invite Shane and the team from ProteoMax to take questions from our judges? And now, Anuj, can I invite you to take it away?
So can you explain how this is different from the other fermentation-based egg replacements, like what Every is doing and some of the other companies are doing? And what's so unique about your process as compared to what they've been doing and raised significantly higher capital and been at this problem for a longer period of time?
Yeah, so to start with how the product itself is different, the Every company currently has egg white proteins, but not the egg yolk protein. So that's something that will differentiate us because we can produce those with our platform technology, which our platform technology is distinguished from other similar technologies out there because we can measure the exact biological response to the stress conditions that relate to scaling up in the production process. So each time you scale up from a lab scale to a bioreactor, the production conditions are optimized and changed without changing the biological conditions, so we can measure exactly how the stress response to match those biological conditions with the changes you're making in the process.
Got it. And is your end game to produce limited to eggs and egg-based products itself, or is this platform technology that you are developing can be used for further other kinds of proteins as well?
Yes, great question. This is not limited to eggs. Eggs is our first demonstration of the potential of our platform technology, but our technology is versatile and can be applicable to any cell type expressing any protein. So we intend to produce ingredients for alternative foods such as sweetening agents and other dairy proteins as well.
I've got a couple of questions. The first products you said are around fortification. Is there any existing market around that today, or do you have to invent the market for that as well? My second question, maybe just as a little bit of follow-on, you said from the beginning that the real barrier is the protein expression, the amount of protein expression for unit economics. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about what protein expression you've reached, what your proof of concept is, what scale that it's at, et cetera, et cetera? And a third and last question, the formulation of the eggs, you said identical taste, texture. Can you talk a little bit about the food science that you've done around that as well at the moment? Thank you.
Okay, so with regards to the proof of concept data we have for the protein expression, so we have used enhanced green fluorescent protein as our model system so far, which is already an optimized protein using current commercial solutions for improving the protein production process, and we were able to achieve a greater than 240% boost in the yields of that already optimized protein. We're also applying our platform to a milk protein as well that is, the manufacturer of that is having difficulties expressing it.
At what scale though? What's the scale?
The scale? Yeah. The scale on these is on a milligram scale currently. They're currently at a milligram scale, and we're doubling that for them at minimum. In terms of the formulation of our products, so what makes them have the same nutritional value of an egg is the same chicken proteins that are from the chicken. We can produce these in bioreactors, so we aren't replacing the protein content of the egg with plant proteins that also have their own value, but they don't have the same bioactivity and health benefits that the proteins that the chicken is naturally making have. So we start with those proteins, of which the egg is 75 to 80% water. Beyond the water, it's primarily protein. So that's why our expertise in protein production already has the majority components of the egg, but now we can combine our proteins with fats that are healthier because, as you know, eggs have a high cholesterol content, which is something that limits their nutritional value. So we can work with nourished ingredients that produces healthier fats from precision fermentation to enhance the health benefits of a natural egg.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead. We have a minute left.
Today, cell-cultured food production, actually one of the big challenge is scalability and price point. So right now you are laboratory skills, and even at 100 liters, you're quite far away. What is your thought about how long it takes to, how many years to bring to what sort of bioreactor size, and what sort of price idea or parity to the real farm egg that you're talking about? How many years?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Like the version we have right now, the version 1.0, as you can call, that is coupled with our software, is able to at least boost it twofold. And as we continue to develop this process and the stuff, we think with development of the new software and the prediction and the data that we get from a scale-up that we are seeing right now, we should be able to increase that in our version 2 and 2 or version 3. That is probably like 24 months or so based on the data that we get. But also bear in mind, this is only the biological side of it. There is simultaneously a lot of advances going on the precision biomanufacturing side of it. So when we couple the biological engineering, thus far, people, if they had to scale up, they had to tweak the process of the precision engineering, just increase the 600 liters, 500 liters, 10,000 liters. But what we are adding is a new component to that by biologically engineering that could couple with the precision biofermentation, so there could be an additive or a multiplicative effect on the yield.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid your time is up, so please join me to thank
you.
ProteoMax. And now swiftly moving on to our next track, which is climate change and decarbonisation. We have Carbex Corporation from the United States to start us off, and representing Carbex is its founder, Johan Quincy Sami, featuring a technology which captures point source emissions from industry and converts the carbon into construction materials.
Hi, I'm Quincy Sami, and I'm the founder and CEO of Carbex. Just a few years ago, we had a concept for climate change, and 3 short years later, we're now standing at the forefront of a new pilot and potentially a new industry. Our team has grown to include a range of mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, and even AI, ML machine programmers. Our challenge and our goal is to capture natural gas emissions from Jurong Island and put those emissions into stones. Not just any stones, but carbonates and cements that when combined will make low emission and net zero concrete. Essentially, we're going to take and decarbonize 2 industries with 1 reactor and a product stream. And this is how we're going to do it. We start by harvesting the flue gas from the natural gas plant. We then combine it with recycled water and even recycled minerals. We do use some fresh minerals. Once combined in the reactor, carbonation occurs, and this is what locks up CO2 for periods up to 1,000 years. And it's also what produces the primary product, carbonates. This is our technology. We call it the X1. It's our MVP product, and it's faster than nature, because nature will also carbonate CO2 into rocks, but it takes decades, eons, up to 1,000 years. In our reactor, we can cut this down to a few minutes, even a few seconds. We do so by injecting UVC treated water into the reactor. This purified water optimizes our reaction kinetics. We then add mineral feedstock, waste or fresh mineral feedstock. We catalyze the partial pressure of the reaction with CO2. We also use high and low speed mixing, and finally heating to complete the reaction. Post-reaction, the slurry is injected where it can be formed into a brick, as in this example, that we later tested and for product development and also compression testing. The market opportunity is nearly $1 trillion opportunity in the construction global materials industry. The Singapore market is thriving, and it's expected to be about 21 billion in construction development this year. Our products are tailored for construction, for low green construction. We start with the cement product, which replaces the conventional product, original Portland cement, because of its high embodied emissions from its manufacturing process. The carbonate cement, blended with a mafic type of cement, reduces emissions nearly 70% when compared to conventional cement. We can also produce high purity carbonates, which have a higher price point and can help drive margins. This is an example of our current carbonate cement and mafic mineral cement that's low carbon. We can create large size aggregates and also fine aggregates with these binders. We're also developing high and low strength concrete structures with this cement, with these cement binders, and as well the high purity calcium carbonate cement, which has a higher product price. Our biggest uptake, and I think our key difference, is how much CO2 that we can uptake in our process. Nearly 50%, which is incredibly more than some competitors that do so when injecting CO2 in concrete mixing. But the benefit goes beyond that. It's double decarbonization of natural gas and also concrete. And because of the blends we use, we believe we can deliver a cheaper product that's stronger and cheaper and also just as durable as conventional products today. For our Singapore pilot, we've had some great discussions with 2 companies in natural gas, YTL, and also a local company that produces and manufactures concrete. For the pilot, once we complete our MOUs or our agreements with these companies, we're going to install 2 of our X1 MVP reactors, and our pilot goal is to capture at least 20 to 25 metric tons, producing at least 50 metric tons of carbonates for sale. And this will kickstart our first sales and marketing in the APAC region. At scale, we're looking at a reactor that can process about 6,000 metric tons of CO2. And for that, from the pilot, we'll have had developed our product and product streams. And we have over 6 product streams that can drive net margins to 22%. For a host plant with the carbon tax, we can see a Capex recovery within 5 years and a return on investment of within 6 years for investors, earning up to 5 times their original investment amount. And this also brings in taxable revenue stream to the local Singapore markets. Our deliverable at the end of our commercial year is to capture 500,000 metric tons of CO2. Most of that will come from decarbonizing the current embodied emissions in cement and also direct capture of the natural gas emission. Combined over 10 years, this will result in nearly 4.4 million metric tons of CO2 captured. And we hope that makes a difference in the skyline of Singapore. This is our commercial scale reactor. It's designed to capture about 6,000 metric tons of CO2. We are currently designing and we plan on fabricating it later this year. And this is our team that I'm proud to introduce. I'm happy to lead this team. I've got over 12 years in clean tech design engineering, and I'm supported by my co-founder, who's a PhD in mechanical engineering and an expert in computational fluid dynamics. Our advisors are both PhDs in their respective fields of chemical engineering and also materials engineering. And lastly, but definitely most importantly, we thank our investors for enabling our dream just a few years ago to become not only a physical reality, but a product reality as we stand on the forefront of our first pilot and potentially the emergence of a new industry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Quinn. I'd like now to invite Quincy on stage to take the question and answer from the judges, and I now like to invite Mr. Lim to start us off.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Congratulations for making it to the finals of the Liveability Challenge.
Thank you. I almost didn't make it to Singapore, but got here in time.
Yeah, I like to see, I really like your X2 reactor, like one of the movies I used to see. It's very interesting. Yeah. I look at your process, and there are a lot of things happening in the process. You have to inject water, pressure, then different speed for mixing and heating and so on. Have you done any calculation about what is the net carbon offset you are doing? Because there's a lot of energy input there in order to get what you're supposed to get.
Well, we have. So at the numbers that we've run at scale would come out if we captured 100,000 metric tons from a plant at Jurong Island or any other natural plant for that matter. Our carbon inputs do vary based on the power in the grid. So for Jurong Island, we estimated that for 104,000 metric tons. Our own footprint would be between 3,000 or 32,000 to 40,000 metric tons. So we still have a net negative, or at least on paper, variance of about 60,000 metric tons of CO2 captured.
And your input is flue gas?
Correct. So the input is the direct flue gas injection. We do have modules like scrubbers for any VOX or particulate matter to catch upstream, but that's very mature technology. So once the flue gas passes through the scrubbers, it's a direct injection to our reactor.
And then flue gas is very harsh or very tough on the various components. So what has been your experience in terms of the need to replace and so on?
So in terms of heating, depending on the type of mineral used, we do use a combination of waste and fresh minerals. Heating can be a useful part of our reaction, so that waste heat We try to capture and use it in our reaction. And also that waste heat from the flue gas through heat exchangers comes in handy for drying out the carbonates. That way it helps reduce our electricity inputs for evaporation.
So just out of curiosity, what is the size of your X2 machine to produce 50 metric tons of carbonate?
So for the, actually it's right on there. So it's our current reactor size. It's barely about 6 feet, about a 10-liter size reactor. What's cool about it is the fast batch processing. So these reactions are occurring every 15 minutes, where our sensors are determining how much CO2 has been bound in the reaction. If we don't get the uptake that we need, we rebatch right away. It's a 15-30 minute rebatch cycle.
What is your main revenue stream?
So we actually, the main revenue stream will be for Jurong Island, for Singapore cement. So it's a combination of calcium carbonate cement, which is a limestone cement replacement, that can be used now with standards and replace Portland by about 15%. But we've also introduced a mafic blend, and this is a new type of mineral that is actually available in parts of Malaysia and Sumatra that doesn't require OPC. However, as we work with our local concrete producer, we'll be doing lots of product testing so that we can ensure that the mineral blends that we use and the carbonates produced match local standards for building code, as well as international standards, ASTM and ACI concrete standards.
So have them be, what is your experience so far? This is a legacy thing because people are used to granite and Portland cement, crushing tests and so on. Have you done any of these things to get industry acceptance because it's going to be an engineering product?
In the U.S., we are actually in product certification now with the state of Massachusetts. We also have a new, we're also doing a similar certification process. I'll announce it with the state of New York. This is a new contract we received just last week. And this is to certify to standards for the United States.
And the experience so far is that it's as good as the good old Portland cement and aggregate?
It's actually slightly better in terms of strength because we use less water. And also in terms of compression strength, we do test two comparable products. Our last brick, which was featured in the video, tested around 4,300 PSI, which is exceeded standard construction grade by about 1,000 PSI.
So in terms of CO2 capture, you're counting on this to be part of your carbon credit and the source of revenue as well?
Correct. So a lot of it depends too, and we are planning for 2025. I realize that the pilot and the carbon tax program and a future carbon sales is under development. However, using technology may generate a lower price point, and we hope that we can find through digital tokens that we can generate higher price points. So where companies that are saving on carbon using our technology can either sell their credits on the exchange or sell to other emitting companies.
One question, last one.
Johan, hi, it's Steve here. I just had one question on competitive advantage. You spoke a lot about, you are better and you're going to be cheaper as well than traditional cement, but also other companies. There's a lot of innovation and investment going into green concrete companies like Carbon Built, Carbon Cure, Solidia, etc. Hundreds of millions of dollars going into those companies. What makes you different?
So our process actually begins upstream we actually create the rock. These companies like Carbon Cure are introducing CO2 at a late mixing stage. So the cement's already been created, the aggregate's already created. Essentially what they're doing is adding more CO2 to the Portlandite matrix to do early carbonation. This does help with curing, but to some degree it also reduces the compressive strength of concrete doing these late stage injections. And that may result in the use of more OPC to balance out the strength. So technically, yes, it may be putting CO2 from one place into another, but it could also increase emissions indirectly by increasing the use of cement like Portland cement because of the lower strength.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid our time is up, so please join me to thank Carbex and
all.
Quincy. Thank you so much. And now we have an ocean solution, Nika.eco from Singapore, and representing them is Lawrence Xiao, co-founder of Nika.eco, and Johan Hua. Their solution is an analysis tool for mangrove restoration and conservation, as well as blue carbon projects.
The world is reaching its tipping point. As someone who grew up coding and loving technology, I had to ask myself, what can I do with my skills to stop the climate crisis? I still vividly remember going on a school trip to Sungai Buloh during secondary school as every other student who had studied in Singapore. Actually, the one on the left was me in my school uniform back then. And I love visiting the beauty of mangroves ever since. Which is why the large amount of mangrove deforestation and degradation in Southeast Asia is a problem that is particularly close to my heart. According to ASEAN Center for Biodiversity, the amount of mangrove area lost in Southeast Asia since 1980 is estimated to be at least 28 times Singapore's land size. Most of these mangrove ecosystems were either cleared for shrimp farms, salt fields, or rice paddies. Fortunately, the carbon market is picking up, with research paper estimating global mangrove investment potential to be $1 billion per year. Luckily for us, 60% of that potential is in Southeast Asia. However, if we assumed equivalent ratios with the mangrove project potential, Southeast Asia only captures 3% of global funding with an investment gap of $0.6 billion per year. Why is that the case? There are four main reasons. First, it is a social inertia. Local communities and economies are already reliant on this aquaculture for more than 40 years in the past. The second problem is a complex project development process, with mangrove project taking as long as 5 years to develop, making it riskier for investors to consider. The third problem is the lack of data. There were missing years, especially from 2020 onwards, as well as low frequency and resolution of data, especially that of Southeast Asia. Another acute problem is the botanical diversity in Southeast Asia. For instance, despite having the comparable land sizes, Southeast Asia has 51 species of mangrove when Mexico only has 4, which further increases the complexity and difficulty aligning methodologies to develop mangrove projects here. That is why we founded Nika.eco, a software company that uses remote sensing and AI to reduce risk and time to market for mangrove projects here. To not disrupt the social issue of local reliance on aquaculture, we spent months helping project developers to study the feasibility of integrating mangrove into shrimp farms, which will not only balance economic development with environmental protection, but also ease the social issues by potentially increasing their shrimp production yield. Imagine this: a project developer convinced the shrimp farmers all over this region in Vietnam to start planting mangroves. They are still taking notes on physical map to track the statuses of hundreds of mangrove here. And that is just the tip of the iceberg for their manual process. To resolve the issue of long development cycle, we built software that uses machine learning model to easily segment out their farms, record them digitally. We then run hydrology analysis to remove farms that is unreachable by tide or will be submerged underwater due to future sea level rise. With a single click of software, we'll also estimate biosequestration potential of those farms if mangroves were planted. Such calculation requires mangrove species for the region. However, it was not publicly available. To resolve this, we built a proprietary machine learning model to classify mangrove vegetations in Southeast Asia by species. Due to our proven technical capabilities, we then received letters of intent from renowned global project investors like Carbon Growth Partners and Hatch Blue, as well as renowned regional project developer Climate Plus, to scale 5 of their projects in places like Sarawak, Malaysia, and Papua New Guinea. Through collaborations in these projects, we will also fuse ground truthing data from drones to continuously enhance our machine learning model, of which the latest results will be made available for our partners on our digital platform to use. Over time, we aim to work with more partners. With even more ground truthing data, our model will eventually yield the highest quality mangrove classification dataset for the whole of Southeast Asia to use. We will use the 1 million prize award to subsidize the cost of these 5 pilot projects, such as the cost of ground truthing, machine learning model training, as well as channeling to their technical assistant and design fund, so that the less riskier the project seems, the more private investment they'll attract. In total, we look to use our software to help project developers replant 200,000 hectares of mangrove into existing aquaculture and further protect 20,000 hectares of mangrove under risk by 2030 in Southeast Asia. These will sequester an estimated 100 million tons of CO2 for the next 40 years. As our technology significantly reduces time and cost of development, this will further instill confidence into other market players for investing into blue carbon in Southeast Asia. We are a very driven young team of professionals based here in Singapore. We left our stable jobs at AWS to try to make a change here, all because we want to unlock more blue carbon potential with AI than ever before. Thank you.
Thank you, Nika.eco. Can I welcome now Johan, as well as Lawrence, on stage for the question and answer segment. And now I'd like to invite Kathleen to start us off.
Hi, thank you so much for that. And what you're working on sounds fantastic. Automating the entire process of feasibility studies while also increasing accuracy as well as reducing costs. It almost sounds too good to be true. So my first question is, how is Nika.eco's analysis from compiled data better than others available on the market today? And it also seems like you have a small team. So do you have the bandwidth and the skill set to train your ground truthing team?
So I think this is where, I think there's 2 questions I'll answer over here. The first question will be about, what makes us really different, I think, from other players. So, and the next question I'll answer about the small team. So the first aspect about the, what differentiates us is that we're actually wouldn't really say we're a typical DMRV startup. We'll compare ourselves more to a typical SaaS startup. Because DMRV typically focuses on monitoring and verification, but for us, and they typically operate in the secondary market in the carbon space. For us, we actually primarily operate in the primary market, where we're really focused on building solutions to actually automate carbon project workflows, so that developers and financiers build and create the best possible projects. One example of this is our most popular feature. It's actually the automation of reference region creations for baselining. Previously, before Nika.eco, our customers have told us they used to take 6 hours with their GIS analysts to draw it in accordance to methodologies. With Nika.eco, they take a few seconds with a click of a button. In terms of the small team size, yes, we do have a small team. However, together with Lawrence, I think, we do have the technical background. I was previously a data analyst from Amazon Web Services, building ranking algorithms for the startup team, while Lawrence was a solution architect as well as software engineer, primarily focused on large accounts in Singapore, such as GovTech Singapore.
Yeah, and just to add on, I don't think we need like hundreds of people to scale this up because we're using mostly the software and modularize them. Instead of in the past, probably you have to have multiple people, some doing geospatial analysis, some doing machine learning, passing the files one to the other. Now you'll be streamlined with our platform to make it more efficient.
Thank you, that's very helpful. So your vision to make GIS analysis accessible to anyone via a tool like ChatGPT, which is, I think it was on your website, has the potential to be extraordinarily impactful. So how ready are you to scale your software? And what is your pricing model and expected financial opportunity?
In terms of the business model for Nika Feasibility, I'll talk about Carbon GPT a little bit later. Nika Feasibility is the product that we are primarily talking about today. So in terms of Nika feasibility, we're actually already on the pathway to be cash flow positive by the end of next month. And the way we primarily operate it is working on pilot programs with large enterprises who see this automation problem at the early stage as a huge problem. And the way we charge is 5 to 15,000 USD for a pilot program, depending on the scale of their project. And then what we do now is we are looking to transition a lot of them onto an enterprise type sales model, where we're working on either annual or monthly subscription. In terms of your next question, about the, sorry, could you repeat your question?
Actually, you answered it, so that was good.
Okay, that's awesome.
And then my next question is, unlike your competitors who offer software as well as do project development, you've been very intentional about wanting to focus only on the software and technology piece. So I was wondering, why the conscious decision to do that?
So I think one thing we've noticed about many other players in the DMRV space is that they're trying to actually be a project developer, financer, as well as technologist all in one. I think Lawrence and I, we really recognize that we are not good at the policy and the carbon aspects of things. We're not climate scientists. What we are good at is code, which is why we partner with some of our amazing already customers, such as Carbon Growth Partners and Comet Plus, who have already used our technologies, because what we really want to do is actually to build these softwares to make them develop projects faster and better.
So I had a final question. I think Steve might have a question too after this. I read that you'd like to develop 5 new mangrove carbon projects opportunities in Southeast Asia in less than 2 years. That's ambitious. And can you tell us a bit about those 5 projects that you have in mind already, and any challenges you think you're going to face?
Yeah, for sure. We really have to, thank our partners who I think really do a lot of the on-the-ground work. We always tell them that we have the easy job. We're just sitting behind computers coding all day, but we really have the easy jobs. But I think what our customers have told us is that they have some sites that they have planned in Sarawak, as well as in other parts of Indonesia and the Philippines as well. And they have already spoken to some of the shrimp farms there. That's where we particularly bring in players such as Hatch, who actually has a lot of experience working with aquaculture and shrimp farms already. And they're actually helping us speak to communities and see whether we can actually do these integrated mangrove shrimp aquaculture projects.
Fantastic, thank you.
We have time for one quick question, last one. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for the presentation. I would love for you guys to succeed. I mean, if you can unlock 220,000 hectares of blue carbon mangrove, that'd be fantastic. Question I've got for you is, you talked about that funding gap of 600 million, and let's say you capture 10 or 20% of that. Typically, the MRV is 5 to 7% of the value chain. How do you think about how big your business can get?
Well, I think this is where it does get tricky, a little bit tricky for us, because we think our product is quite unique in the type of things where we really focus on automating these processes. So there's not really a direct comparison now. However, what we do know is that the global satellite services industry is estimated to rise to about 25 billion by 2027. Now for us, what we look for is we maybe potentially capture 5% of that, or we feel that could be, and that's about 1.2 billion. So that's in terms of how we estimate our TAM size for today.
Thank you. I'm afraid your time is up. Please join me to thank Nika.eco for
Thank you for your questions.
novel solution.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to the next team, Sustion from the United States. Representing them is Raghubir Gupta, the co-founder of Sustion, and Sundarshan Gupta, Chief Operating Officer. Their solution? Capturing and recycling CO2 from point sources by converting it into synthetic natural gas.
Hi everyone, my name is Arnold Topo, and I'm a process design engineer at Sustion. And I'm excited today to share our technology developments in the production of renewable or synthetic natural gas, which can help Singapore reduce its total CO2 emissions by at least 20% and save over $1 billion every year. Formed in 2018, Sustion has been on a mission to innovate, develop, and deploy technologies in the areas of CO2 capture and utilization and carbon-free hydrogen production. To do so, we connect with the public and private sectors, which allows us to create solutions and commercialize the technology with a go-to-market ethos. And today, we'd like to share this technology, which has been in development since 2018 with Singapore, a country facing a massive challenge today: climate change. Singapore emitted 50 million tons of CO2 equivalent in 2020 alone, with most of the emissions being dominated by electricity generation in the industry and power sectors. In fact, over 90% of the energy in Singapore's electricity mix is through the combustion of imported natural gas, which is on the rise as the country strives to curtail its own CO2 emissions. At Sustion, we have sought to address these challenges using our novel dual-function materials, or DFM for short. This technology has been tailored to capture and convert the CO2 emitted by Singapore's refineries and combine it with readily available waste hydrogen-containing gas to economically produce CH4, or in this instance, synthetic natural gas, in a single unit operation. This SNG can then be used as fuel for power generation, transportation, residential applications, and industry. This technology will be focused at reducing the emissions in Singapore's petrochemical industry, which has the highest single sector emissions by 50%. It'll also provide a domestic substitute for 100% of the imported liquefied natural gas, thereby saving Singapore at least $1 billion or 50% of its annual LNG expenditure. Our DFM technology allows for these massive benefits in a single unit with only 2 steps: CO2 capture and hydrogenation. Examining the DFM on a molecular level allows us to see exactly how that takes place. The material is comprised of 2 components: the adsorbent, also known as the capture agent, and the supported catalyst, also known as the conversion agent. In fact, the design of the DFMs is the heart of our technology, made from low-cost, widely available materials for an economically scalable solution. In the CO2 capture step, the combustion flue gas from a refinery is cooled and fed to the DFM module. Here, the adsorbent component of the DFM removes the CO2 from the flue gas to produce a CO2 lean effluent stream. As the adsorbent is saturated with CO2, the DFM module is switched to the hydrogenation step, where hydrogen-containing fuel gas is introduced to convert the captured CO2 to synthetic natural gas. By cycling between the CO2 capture and hydrogenation steps in multiple DFM modules, much like in a pressure swing adsorption system, SNG can be produced continuously. Our first generation DFM module captures 80% of the CO2 from flue gas, of which more than 85% is converted to SNG, thereby utilizing nearly a whopping 70% of the CO2 which would otherwise have been emitted. The implications of this are absolutely massive. Of the nearly 50 million tons of CO2 equivalent emitted by Singapore in 2020, about 40% or 20 million tons of CO2 equivalent are from the petrochemical industry and will be our target. Over the next decade, our DFM technology can reduce the emissions from this sector by at least 50%. And converting CO2 to SNG, this technology can also provide a domestic alternative for the 3.5 million tons of liquefied natural gas that are imported annually. As a result, this can help Singapore save over $1 billion every year. And the economic benefits don't end there. When comparing the cost of natural gas from traditional sources, such as imported liquefied natural gas, which costs $15 per MMBTU, where MMBTU is a unit of energy, and industrial methanation at $12 per MMBTU, synthetic natural gas produced using Sustion's DFMs costs just $7 per MMBTU, or under half the cost of imported LNG. The result is an annual savings of $1 billion and is achieved in tandem with a business model, which in the long run is a DFM technology license package for 10 to 50 ton per day units, which can be used at existing refineries by integrating the DFM technology. This is a technology we have already proven on a system which can capture and convert CO2 to SNG at a rate of 1 kilogram per day. The gap between this system and our long-term technology license business model is one we intend on bridging by using the Temasek prize to deploy a pilot plant with a capture capacity of 100 kilograms of CO2 per day. Will be strengthened by partnering and collaborating with a technology R&D agency in Singapore, with whom we're in early discussions to leverage their expertise in pilot plant development, and ExxonMobil, with whom we're currently exploring a commercialization partnership to deploy our first DFM units at its refineries in Singapore. At Sustion, we're strategically positioned to commercialize the DFM technology and massively reduce Singapore's CO2 emissions with the experience of our team members, whose work has resulted in over 35 patents being awarded and applied to over 50 pilot plants, which have been deployed, and collectively over 10 technology innovations which have been commercialized. Sustion's DFM technology will enable Singapore to reduce its total CO2 emissions by at least 20% and provide a domestic alternative to its imported LNG, and as a result, save over $1 billion every year.
Thank you so much for that super interesting presentation. Can I now invite Raghubir and Sudarshan on stage to take some questions from our judges? And we have Steve to start us off.
Hi guys. Thanks very much for the presentation. Very, very excited if you can get this right. I think there's a huge amount of investment and excitement going on around synthetic fuels at the moment. And I think if you can achieve this, 20% reduction in Singapore's greenhouse gas emissions and reducing down 100% of imported LNG would be fantastic. And all doing that in just 7 to 10 years sounds fantastic if you can make it happen. I guess the question is, what will it take to make that happen? What kind of investment, team, resources will it take to achieve those goals?
Okay, so I think the basic proof of concept results have been already achieved. We have a small working unit of this technology in the United States. So we have been in discussion with the ExxonMobil, which has the largest refinery in Singapore. So they have provided us the data on the CO2 sources and also the hydrogen sources. So we have using the real data to put together a business plan. So that is the reason we want to make sure that we can demonstrate this technology for the Singapore conditions and really take those streams by working with a local agency, R&D agency, which we are in serious discussions to set up the partnership. So idea will be to, I think this will be a modular unit. So once we design and demonstrate a modular unit somewhere between 10 to 50 ton per scale, because the limiting factor here is the hydrogen availability. That's the most, it's not the CO2 availability, it's the hydrogen availability. So we are carefully looking at the hydrogen stream, which are currently incinerated, burned for the heat value, and we can use the hydrogen value of that hydrogen to really convert this thing. We don't need pure hydrogen in this case. So this is very, very good question. That's what we are very excited about it, because the technical risk is quite low here. It's just figuring out how do we go to the next step.
And the other thing I'd add is, we're not looking to build massive plants. We're looking to build a technology license package, hand it over to EPCs, let them take it from there. Our core business model will be focused on providing our proprietary catalyst and coupling that with the technology license package.
I guess you've answered the question partially, but I'm still not really clear. And you've said you're going to reduce Singapore's emissions by 20%. It's a big number in 7 to 10 years. I'm not clear how you're going to do that.
So what we do is, so you said 50 million tons of this CO2 per year is emitted. So what our addressable market is 10 tons per day, 10 million tons of CO2 per year. So that use that CO2 and they use that hydrogen to convert into methane. So that's basically our goal, is to get to 10 million tons of CO2 per year, in this case, And that will take probably 10 years to get there, if we can, build this process around. Again, if we had more hydrogen, we could do more. There's no lack of CO2, believe me. This is what our major limitations are.
Right. What does it take for a customer to implement this? And who would that customer be in your case?
So yeah, so that's very good. So first and foremost is we need to put a demonstration unit so people show that it works. And that's where the Axon is going to be helping us to really allow to use the refinery here in Singapore. Once we have that pilot unit running, then as Sustion said, we will basically put together a technology package and have any local engineering company in Singapore manufacture the unit, and we will set up a manufacturing agreement with a catalyst company. And there's, Clarent, for example, as a major manufacturing operation in Singapore, and we've been already talking to them. So pretty much the whole manufacturing activities, we would like to be as much as in Singapore as possible for this technology.
And how do you see that adoption taking place in terms of, I guess at the moment it's going to be a huge green premium around doing this. And so how do you see customers adopting this?
Well, I think once they see the value of the methane which is produced from this process, there are double benefits here. As you said, we are basically mitigating the CO2 emissions on one side because we are taking the flue gas directly. You don't need to have a separate CO2 capture system which captures it directly. And in the second time, the methane which is coming from outside as an LNG, that methane is substituted by the methane we produce in the process. So it's not that we will need another infrastructure for a new product or new molecule. That infrastructure already exists. So that's the beauty about this process. So we didn't focus on Fischer-Tropsch or other chemistries which require further downstream treatment. We wanted to focus on a very simple molecule so we can get into the market quickly with this technology.
And final question, you talked about 50 pilots running globally. Can you share a little bit more around that?
50 pilots. So I think the first is Singapore. One of the things with Singapore is very unique because of the large petrochemicals.
Your past pilots.
Oh, past pilots, sorry. Okay. So we have run a lot of CO2 capture units. Like for example, we have one pilot on cement in Norway running. We ran one very, very large pilot in Florida, Tampa Electric, where we captured 1,000 tons per day of CO2 in that unit. We ran a pilot in Norway on a Mongstad refinery, where we captured 10 tons per day of CO2. So we kept building. So there are a lot of technologies which got scaled up from lab scale to the commercial scale through those pilots.
Thank you so much. Steve has asked so many questions, we run out of time. So thank you so much to Sustion.
Thank you.
For all your responses. And now we're moving to a team, Seaforestation.co from the Philippines. And representing Seaforestation is Dr. Brian von Herzen, Director at Seaforestation, and Dr. Christopher Demberg, Chief Impact Officer. Their solution, marine permaculture, which aims to scale seaweed forest regeneration to remove atmospheric carbon and provide deep water irrigation.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Brian von Herzen, Director of Seaforestation, which regenerates coastal community livelihoods, food security, marine ecosystems, and true blue carbon sinks. Like you, I'm concerned about what's happening on our ocean planet Earth today. I grew up in the company of fish, sea lions, otters like the ones in Singapore, and seaweed forests, learning from my oceanographer father and discovering a world teeming with life beneath the waves. This love for the oceans has led me to protecting our vital oceans. I actually got the chance to dive with these schools of amberjacks in Mexico when I was young with my father and uncle. It was an unforgettable experience. Unfortunately, 93% of global warming has been absorbed by the surface oceans. That warm water goes on a giant conveyor belt across the Pacific right into Southeast Asia. Life in the oceans has declined 70% in the last 50 years. And I've witnessed it firsthand. That means 2/3 of the fish that were present in the 1970s are gone today. So I'm driven by a question: what can we do to keep the ocean alive? My search for answers led me to identify a key problem: the failure of natural upwelling. Now, circulation is good for your body, and it's also good for the ocean. Natural upwelling is the ocean circulation. Without circulation, we die, and so do the oceans. The upwelling is faltering today with devastating consequences for marine ecosystems and coastal communities alike. In fact, in 2015, a failure of upwelling in Indonesia wiped out 60% of the seaweed harvest, and in fact, in the Philippines, in some places, 70%. a warning of the devastating disruptions yet to come. Unfortunately, no civilization has survived the collapse of the seas and the soils long term. Fortunately, we found a solution, and our solution is marine permaculture Seaforestation, a submersible platform that can protect and grow seaweed in a warming ocean and provides nature-based ocean carbon removals, creating carbon credits, and in the process regenerating seaweed production and regenerating marine ecosystems. How does it work? Well, deep cycling works by dropping the seaweed platform down at night where it collects nutrients. At sunrise, the platform rises back to the surface where the seaweed soaks up sunlight and carbon dioxide in the top meter of the sea. Deep cycling mimics natural upwelling and enables seaweed to be cultivated across the vast expanse of deep ocean. Here's a video of one of our deep cycling seaweed platforms where you can see our red and green seaweeds growing well offshore where it's otherwise hard to grow seaweed. Seaweed farmers become more climate resilient with Seaforestation. The biostimulant produced enables rice farmers to adapt to heat waves and droughts, cutting their fertilizer needs by 20% while increasing the rice yields by 15 to 30%. At the same time, the seaweed captures carbon, with a quarter of that seaweed naturally sinking 1,000 meters a day to the ocean depths, taking its organic carbon with it to the abyss for centuries. We can sink 8,000 tons of carbon dioxide per square kilometer per year and 22,000 tons of avoided emissions on the agriculture that uses those biostimulants. In addition, we've identified a dozen value chains for our seaweed cultivation, starting with this food, feed, and fertilizer products. Our business model shows that each hectare of marine permaculture will produce million-dollar revenue streams for food, feed, and fertilizer products, and a stream of carbon removal dividends that accrue to investors. But we don't have to rely on those carbon removals for our business model to succeed. Our unique advantages include that we have the deepest moored platform in the world at 350 meters. We increase seaweed yields by up to 200% with deep cycling, and we grow seaweed even in mostly empty ocean and sink carbon at a negative cost with food security revenues financing the platforms. Because we're on a journey to regenerate the ocean, to breathe life back into its waters and restore its crucial role in our climate system, we're pioneering a solution that can restore marine health, boost local economies, and fight climate change. We're not just dreaming of a better future, we're actively building it. We address all three key sustainability development goals for the Liveability Challenge: sustaining communities, marine ecosystems, and scalable carbon removal. We've got an extraordinary team, including Mr. Perfecto Tubal, our expert in seaweed growth and aquaculture, and our team of biologists, chemists, business experts, and engineers. Our Philippine team also includes all of our local seaweed farmers, fishermen, welders, marine biologists, chemists, and builders who are helping us build these sustainable platforms today. Beyond our first successful platform, we're planning to triple the area under deep water irrigation every year. Doing that for a dozen years, we can capture a gigaton of carbon dioxide, an audacious goal, but one that's worthy of attempting. And on the way, we can build a sustainable climate wedge along with habitat, food production, and economic security. We're not doing this alone, as you can see from this list of collaborators, which include NASA, include the University of Philippines and National Taiwan University, just to name a few in Southeast Asia. Winning the X Prize for carbon removal gave us a great start on the economically sustainable hectare. The Liveability Challenge will complete our funding needed for the full hectare and enable us to prove out our hectare scale business model and per unit economics in the next 12 months. With that funding gap covered, we'll be one step away to scaling to dozens of hectares and building out the marine permaculture industry with leadership right here in Southeast Asia. In the meantime, we're building revenue from our biostimulant concurrently with our platform scaling for sustained revenue. We invite you to join us on this journey, balancing people, planet, and profit with sustainable food security, ecosystem regeneration, and carbon export. Let's together safeguard the livelihoods of seaweed farmers and rice farmers, and together regenerate a sustainable, carbon negative, and climate positive future for all our children. Thank you for your interest in Seaforestation.
Thank you very much for that presentation. can now invite Brian and Christopher up on stage. Christopher here is with us in person, and I think Brian is online, and we can beam him in.
Yes.
Okay, now take it away. Kathleen can ask our question.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you.
Just trying.
Technical problems, as always.
Oh, we are on.
Okay.
Super nice to meet you, and I love that you're working on seaweed and how passionate about the ocean you are. So your method of using deep water irrigation is said to be more effective than traditional seaweed farming.
Yes.
There's extension of the growing season and yield, but I was curious, what is it compared to traditional seaweed farming? Is that like 2 times, 3 times? What does that look like in terms of quantification?
Of course, everything depends on the type of seaweed that we grow. So on average, it's about 3 times that effective. But obviously, it depends on the zone, type of seaweed, as I said, where you grow it. And as we said, another important point here is climate resilience, right? So, one thing is looking at numbers and quantification of that. Another is looking into the future. And as we see with the climate forecast and what we are experiencing now in the world, it will be more and more difficult to grow the seaweeds. So, the demand for seaweed is going up, and the possibility to grow it is decreasing very rapidly. So that's why, if you look into the future, that difference will grow, and especially, I think the most important thing for us is that that resilience is there, right? So this natural upwelling, which is the circulation that our technology is mimicking, is the key for it, and the key to actually not only sustain but regenerate. Another thing, and another very important thing, is regeneration, right? So it is not only seaweed growing. When you grow seaweed, you actually regenerate the biodiversity of the ocean. So you have different species of fish coming back, and other species of sea life, right? And in a very similar way, we are also, regenerating livelihoods of people, and this is extremely important because, seaweed and money is one thing, but especially in Southeast Asia and zones like the Philippines, it is basically livelihood of people, right? So regenerating ecosystems, regenerating biodiversity, at the same time regenerates livelihoods.
It's a wonderful segue into my next question because, you've got the benefits, but you also have the co-benefits, which are extremely important in this case as well. So in order to get the most value from local communities use, in your presentation, you talked about creating high-value products for export. You had the biorefinery for the biostimulant, and then there was also animal feed somewhere, and I think there were also 12 others. So I was curious, can you tell us about your process for identifying the specific downstream products that you'd like to develop, and how you're finding your partners to help you achieve this?
Sure.
I'd like to, mention that Brian, the founder, is now online as well, so he will be chiming in. Go ahead.
Excellent. Part of the products are already on the market, right? So the biostimulant that you saw is already on the market. It is not in tests or whatever, we're actively selling it. And that's why the numbers that you've seen are the real numbers. We're conducting tests with other crop. So the one thing is one product can be expanded and grow into different markets. So for example, recently we conducted tests in Europe with grapes, with the biostimulant from the Philippines. So that's one, and obviously, application of seaweed is so vast. So we say, we focus on feed, food, and fertilizer. So seaweed is a great food. Fertilizer is, biostimulant cuts the use of fertilizer and increases the growth of the yield of rice and other crops. And another thing is feed for ruminant stock. So some types of seaweed actually cut emissions, methane emission from the cows. And we're conducting tests now also with farmers in Australia around that. And then you have pharmaceutical, cosmetic industry, biofuels, right? So there are, and packaging. So a lot of impact investment is going now into packaging and substitutes for plastics. So seaweed is vital for this part also. And now when you go around in Southeast Asia especially, including Singapore, plastic is such a massive problem, right? And such a massive problem not only for the oceans but for our health. These are the opportunities. How we decide is, obviously we look at financial viability, performance of the product, so science behind this, and as we've shown, we have a big array of different partners, scientific partners with that. And another element is obviously impact. So it is very important for us, not just numbers and money, but also type of impact that we create, and especially focus on regeneration.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I would just like to add that Cargill is one of our off-takers as well for food products. And so we're very happy to have Cargill as one of our major partners for off-taking food ingredients, carrageen, and other food products. Thank you.
Any last questions? Okay, a quick one, as time is quickly up.
Just a quick one.
Of course.
Yeah, what's the intellectual property here, and what do you think about the defensibility around this?
Brian, so that's your question, I think.
Yes, that's fine. We've pioneered the deep water irrigation and the deep cycling, which is a fundamental approach to being able to increase the production of seaweed over time. And so our patent applications through the World International Patent Organization are focused on the deep water irrigation techniques, and then secondly, the biorefineries that can turn the seaweed into food, feed, and fertilizer products in a nicely integrated way. And so it's those initial IP areas where we've been leading, but ultimately we see an opportunity to license and franchise hectares of marine permaculture for thousands of coastal communities across Southeast Asia and across the world. And we see this development certainly starting in the Philippines, with Singapore as a global headquarters, as being a key opportunity for us to build that intellectual property base and really expand the marine permaculture industry globally. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and our time is up. So thank you so much for Seaforestation and your answers. Thank you. All right, time really flies, and we're down to our last team now, which is Seabound from United Kingdom. Representing Seabound is Alicia Fredrickson, the co-founder and CEO, who is dialing in from the UK. Over to you.
Hi, I'm Alicia, the co-founder and CEO of Seabound. The problem we're tackling is that shipping is extremely hard to decarbonize and accounts for about 3% of global CO2 emissions. There are actually brand new global regulations for ship owners to reduce CO2 emissions that started this year, but there's no solutions that are viable yet for regulatory compliance down the line. Electrification isn't suitable for the large volumes of cargo that we're moving across such long distances, and future fuels are still about 10 to 20 years away from being in sufficient and reliable supply. Finally, efficiency solutions don't yet cut it. So at Seabound, we build carbon capture technology specifically for ships to trap up to 95% of their CO2 emissions. We're faster to market versus other solutions because we're leveraging technology that's relatively mature on land and bringing it over for ship-based application. We're designing it for retrofits and for new builds, as well as for the largest transoceanic vessels. And finally, we capture up to 95% that the ship owner can choose depending on their preference. So I'll tell you about the conventional approach to CO2 first. There's two phases, capture and regeneration. In the capture phase, CO2 reacts with some sort of a binder to lock the CO2, and the clean exhaust is released without CO2. The regeneration phase, CO2 is separated from that binder, and the binder is reused in the first phase again to capture more CO2, and the pure CO2 is then compressed and liquefied in order to be pumped underground or turned into new products. This is a very CapEx intensive approach, which works for large volumes of CO2, like a power plant on land, but is very difficult to put on board a ship. And actually a study from the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative recently found if you put all of this equipment on a ship, it would cost about $30 million US per ship. It's very energy intensive as well because that second regeneration phase needs a lot of energy, both for the actual reaction and for compressing and purifying the CO2 afterwards, or compressing and liquefying it, excuse me. It's limited in scale because it needs to wait for pipelines in order to be transporting the CO2 by pipeline once the ship gets to port. And then finally it uses toxic chemicals, which poses safety risks for crew and for the environment. So at Seabound, we took a different approach. We actually cut this whole process in half in order to just do the capture phase on board, and then we can move that regeneration phase on shore where we can leverage economies of scale and land-based energy infrastructure. This enables us to have very compact systems on board, and we reduce CapEx by about 90% relative to the conventional approach. We also have negligible energy requirements on board because, again, we've moved that second phase on shore, and we don't need to do the compression or liquefaction on a specific ship. We use a solid binding material, so we skip the compression and liquefaction stage, which again reduces cost and energy requirement. And finally, we use non-toxic materials, which are significant for crew safety. The way this works is that we use a material called calcium oxide, CaO, which is also known as quicklime, and we react that with the CO2 to make calcium carbonate, which is also known as limestone. So essentially, we make limestone on ships. And then the second phase on land is the reverse reaction. We separate the calcium carbonate back into CO2 and calcium oxide. We then can reuse the calcium oxide to capture more on another ship, and then we sell the pure CO2 for utilization or sequestration. Alternatively, one of the exciting ideas or exciting opportunities about our approach is that we can just sell limestone, which is already a product in itself, for building materials. And so we don't need to wait to build land-based infrastructure in multiple different ports before being able to scale our system. We can have a lot of logistical flexibility to sell both limestone or pure CO2. The progress we've made so far, so we've built 2 land-based prototypes to demonstrate the compact form of carbon capture device for which we have a patent pending. We've also signed 7 letters of intent with major ship owners such as Eastern Pacific Shipping and Lomar. We raised $4.6 million for our seed round from investors like Y Combinator and Lower Carbon Capital, and we just won a grant from Innovate UK as well to further develop our technology. Our business model comprises of 3 components. We sell carbon capture equipment and a pebble subscription for the calcium oxide to ship owners, and then we sell the byproduct, whether it be pure CO2 or limestone, and that's to electrofuel producers or to the construction industry. We then share that byproduct revenue stream with our ship owner customers in order to offset the cost of the pebble subscription and to make the overall service more affordable. This means we can do carbon capture on board for less than $40 per ton of CO2 for our ship owner customers. The market size is about $87.5 billion and projected to triple by 2050. And this is because of the amount of ships in the industry that we're targeting, and then the amount that we make per ship per year. And the amount we make per ship per year depends on how much CO2 each of the ships emit, and we earn about $125 per ton of CO2, all inclusive. For our roadmap, we have 3 pilots planned before we go commercial in 2025. The first is a relatively small-scale pilot we start this summer, funded by Innovate UK, and the second is a full-scale pilot funded by Innovate UK that's happening in 2024. Finally, we're proposing for the 3rd pilot to be funded by the Liveability Challenge, and this is specifically oriented around testing a modular system that we've been designing for container ships specifically. And finally, once we've done those 3 demonstrations, that's when we'll be ready to go commercial, and we will fulfill pre-orders from 2025. So the Liveability Challenge funding would cover about 58% of that 3rd pilot project that we're proposing, and Seabound would cover the rest from our seed funding. We're super proud of the team that we've compiled. So I previously worked on a maritime electrofuel startup. My co-founder has experience in materials and fluids for advanced R&D projects. and she has a theoretical physics master's from Cambridge. We've also got a couple of ex-SpaceX engineers, really seasoned naval architects, and a world leader in carbon capture on board. Our ambition is to capture CO2 on 1,000 ships by 2030 and 10,000 by 2040 to capture about 200 million tons of CO2 per year by 2040. Finally, why Seabound for the Liveability Challenge? We can have a massive impact because we're tackling one of the final hard-to-abate sectors. We think Singapore is the best pilot market for our technology, given the prominence of shipping and the number of ship owners in the ecosystem. And finally, it's the best launch market because as we're doing this pilot, it'll serve as a big demonstration project for which we can then secure pre-orders to be fulfilling from 2025 onwards. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for that presentation. We're going to be beaming Alicia in online right now for her Q&A section. And there she is. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us, for dialing in from the UK. Over to Mike to start us off with your question.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for the presentation and good morning to you. My very first question is why calcium looping? Because there are other solid state kind of a CCUS technology out there. So what's the competitive advantage here when you choose calcium looping?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, it's a really good question. So when we started, we had this question, can you do onboard capture? If so, what type of technology? How much would it cost? What would it look like? And so we were actually technology agnostic when we started. And we did this very extensive literature review to look at all the different types of technology out there to figure out what would be most suitable for ship-specific constraints. We realized that if you were to take the most commercially mature type of technology, which is called an amine-based system, the Carbex would simply be too high for ship-specific constraints. And then it would be logistically challenging and limited in scale because it would result in gaseous CO2 that you would need to compress and liquefy and then transport by pipeline. And so that's where we realized that calcium looping, which is a second generation type of technology, could help us to address what we identified to be some of the most critical challenges and to reduce costs to make it feasible for onboard applications.
Right, thanks for that. So related to that, right, calcium looping is not novel. So in your case, what is the intellectual property here and what's the defensibility?
Yeah, for sure. So we're working on a compact form of calcium looping device. I can't go into too much detail because it is confidential, but essentially, typically calcium looping devices have a really massive footprint and really massive capex, and we've come up with a way to basically, simplify it down to use pebbles instead of powder, and then to be able to decouple the process as well. So we only have to do the capture phase on board, and then we can concentrate and have larger scale regeneration facilities on shore.
All right, okay, I'm gonna move off tangent a little bit into the business model itself, because this doesn't just require the reactor on the ship itself, but you actually require infrastructure at the port itself. So my question is that who's going to bear the cost of that, and who's going to run that infrastructure in the port? And a follow-on question from that is, what kind of minimum number of ship need to adopt this technology for this to be feasible? Because you need this in various ports, right, to make it work.
So yes and no to your last question, but I'll start with your first question. So we are teaming up with major lime companies. We're in discussion with a number of them at the moment to figure out who would be the best fit. But essentially they produce quicklime. That's a big part of their business, or it's the core part of their business. And so we would be purchasing the lime from them and then reselling that to our customers and making sure that it's suitable for the onboard capture devices that we've been developing. And so it's lime companies that build those facilities. That's not something that Seabound takes on. The size question, it depends a little bit on the size of the facility. So in some cases, for instance, in the first couple of years, we're looking at sourcing excess capacity from existing lime plants rather than building, entire dedicated plants for Seabound. And that way we can really test out and prove the ship-based component before we build too much land-based infrastructure. But then for the next facility that we're looking at in 25, 26, then we're looking at about 5 ships for one facility. We don't actually need land-based facilities in multiple ports necessarily, because we can sell limestone off the back of the ships. And so we don't need to be doing that regeneration cycle. So if you had one land-based facility to begin with, then you could drop off limestone in multiple other ports, as long as you're bunkering it from that original location.
Right. Okay. So have you started discussion with like any port authority or port operators on this, having infrastructure at the airport? Okay.
Yeah, we're just kicking off that process at the moment.
Yeah. And one last question. I mean, what's your thinking? What's your thoughts? Because there's a lot of talk about new fuel being used for the marine sector, such as ammonia, etc. So if that is being adopted, what's the impact here on your business?
Yeah, I think about this in terms of an optimistic and a pessimistic scenario. I think the optimistic scenario is that future fuels are developed in the next 10 to 20 years away. And one of the most contending fuels, which is methanol, which I have previous experience in, actually requires CO2 as a feedstock. And ironically, it's relatively difficult to source accessible and affordable CO2. And so in this optimistic scenario, I see Seabound as actually facilitating the development of the electrofuel industry by providing CO2 for fuel production and potentially even turning ports into these circular fuel hubs. So we could potentially accelerate that fuel scenario. In the pessimistic scenario, I think there are other industries that also want these fuels that are able to pay more than the shipping industry, which is where I think shipping will continue to burn fossil fuels for maybe 2 to 3 decades to come. And that's where I think the best thing we could possibly do is to capture the emissions from those conventionally fueled vessels.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for. Thank you so much, Alicia, for dialing in. Please join me to thank her. And now that brings us to the end of our finalist pitches, and thank you all the teams for your wonderful presentations, your hard work, and for your insights. Judges, I would like now to invite you to the VIP room to adjourn, to take a recess for your deliberations as you decide who you're going to award your investment prizes and the $1 million prize as well. For our guests, please stay with us for the next segment. We will be hearing from last year's TLC winner, Fair Ventures Social Forestry, who will be sharing with us their journey since they won the $1 million last year. Shortly after, we will be moving into our fireside chat, Innovators and Investors Accelerating a Sustainable Transition, featuring 2 distinguished speakers, Atsushi Tiara, Executive Partner at Mistletoe Japan and Managing Director of Mistletoe Singapore, as well as Dawn Chan, Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Impact Investing and Practices, moderated by our Director of Partnerships, Megan C. For now, please enjoy this video.
Such a fantastic moment for us, because we, as a team, we put all our efforts in making it to the shortlist, and we didn't expect at all to win the big prize. But then when that was announced, it was a fantastic moment for the whole team, and it was also a very emotional moment to get such a big recognition for our business. Indonesia faces significant pressure on its forests because of environmentally harmful activities, such as conversions of forests into oil palm plantations, illegal logging, slash and burn agriculture. We would like to reverse this trend by showcasing that community-based agroforestry and conservation projects can be economically viable. From our point of view, the key success factor for such projects is creating stable, long-term income opportunities for the people living in or around the projects. With the funding, we will de-risk our 2 new projects. De-risking related to the social, technical, and legal aspects. By de-risking, we make sure that it's investable, and we will secure further funding to fully develop those 2 projects.
Now we have to focus on rubber. We have a potential of 1,800 hectares rubber, and we managed to plant that more sustainably by connecting into bigger off-taker. We already have some connection with off-taker in Indonesia and in Germany. So we have to change quite drastically from planning to have a timber plantation and have agroforestry system under that timber plantation. Now we're focusing on managing the rubber. And the problem also, the rubber in here is not rubber plantation, it's rubber forest. You have to understand the culture, the people, and how they have a strong attention with the rubber jungle.
Try to develop a small network of senior experts from different fields around you, to whom you can talk and exchange thoughts and ideas to get very valuable insights, in most cases for free, because the senior experts are triggered by what you do. They find it very interesting. They are part of your network. So make use of their experience and knowledge and try to shape and improve your business based on the input you get. What has been an important step for us is to decide that we're gonna implement both a Singapore and an Indonesian entity within our structure, enabling our local team to really become co-owners of the projects we develop. So it is really, let's say, the Indonesian ownership and foreign ownership coming together in one structure. And I think that is that's just extremely important.
Good afternoon. Mic check. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that very, very heartwarming video from last year's winner. I am Megan C., Eco-Business's Director of Partnerships, and I'm very, very pleased to be moderating today's plenary discussion, Innovators and Investors Accelerating a Sustainable Transition. For those of you tuning in from wherever you are, thank you for taking the time to join us for the Liveability Challenge Grand Finale today. We do have a Q&A session as well, so please, for the audience in the room, you can scan the QR code that will be shown on the screen shortly. And for our virtual audience, please feel free to also put your questions into the respective chat boxes. Allow me now a few moments to set out the context of our discussion. The global community is stepping up efforts to address climate change and decarbonize economies, but with geopolitical tensions, rising inflation, food and energy supply chain disruptions, among many other pressing challenges, these efforts are at risk. Innovation is a key driver of our response to the climate crisis, ocean conservation, and food security needs. But how can we accelerate these efforts, and how can investors play a key role in enabling the commercialization of these innovations? What collaborations are needed in the search for breakthrough innovations that will accelerate a sustainable transition? I definitely do not have the answers to these questions, but our distinguished panelists here hopefully will shine some light on them. But before I go on to introduce to you our panelists, I'd like to pose this question to our audience here before we go on to the first question for our panelists. So in one word or phrase, how would you describe investors' sentiment on impact investing today? You can add a word or phrase in, and we're going to see the word cloud populate. If everyone, I don't see you holding up your phones. Everyone should be holding up their phones right now. Thank you. So as the words start to populate the word cloud, I'm very excited to introduce to you our panelists for today. We have Atsushi Tiara, Executive Partner of Mistletoe Japan and Managing Director of Mistletoe Singapore, a venture capital fund and a hub for startups and the overall entrepreneurial ecosystem. And earlier this year, Atsushi also co-founded The Edge Of in Singapore to establish the Pan-Asia startup ecosystem to support, develop, and expand startups poised to transform the world, spanning from Singapore to the greater Pan-Asian market. And Don Chan here, the CEO of the Center for Impact Investing and Practices, or CIIP for short, and Managing Director of Investments at Temasek Trust Capital. Don leads and sets the strategic direction and growth of CIIP and manages the investment portfolio for Temasek Trust Capital as well. Sustion and Don, thank you so much for joining us today in this chat. Please feel free to also comment and chime on each other's responses as you get along in our discussion. So as you see the word cloud being populated, I would love for you to comment on that as well. But my question really here is, what in your opinion is or will be the key driver to accelerate a sustainable transition? I'm going to start with Dawn first, and then we'll go to Asushi.
I do think we need a very strong partnership by both companies as well as investors. And I think the main thing is that we need to be very clear about what we're doing in terms of creating solutions and measure them. I don't think we need another round of greenwashing or impact washing. That would actually discourage any movement in this area.
Thank you very much for having me, first of all. And I'm so excited to see the like-minded founders and the investors here. And actually, we started a sort of impact investment 8 or 9 years ago. And then when we started, then people said, oh, Atsushi, you are doing something like a charity or philanthropy, no more investment or business. Most of people said that because no kind of concept of the sustainability investment or impact investment, maybe a little bit, right? But now people are talking about, oh, sustainability is for sure, impact investment for sure, right? And the vast majority people now start to understand. So in that sense, such kind of climate change, actually climate change for investors are quite great. And then that's a kind of, one word from my side.
Thank you so much, Sustion and Dawn. Dawn, you're so curious about the words there. I would love for you to also chime in for that. But also related to my first question to you, CIIP fosters impact investing in Asia and beyond as well. How is CIIP enlarging the impact investing ecosystem in Asia, specifically in encouraging private capital allocation from investors and philanthropists towards impact outcomes? You can use one of these words as well to describe that.
So the first thing I agree with, as she said, there was a lot of misunderstanding about impact. And the impact approach actually spans the entire continuum of capital. You can go from market returns to concessionary and catalytic capital, all the way to pure grant making, right? So it just depends on where you are on that spectrum. But where you have to understand is that there is an intentional approach to creating solutions. This is not just about compliance. And you have to measure the outcomes, both the positive and the negative, no matter where you are on that spectrum, whether you're from market all the way to pure grant. So that's what actually distinguishes the approach. It has, we've been working hard to make sure that we educate both sides of the demand and supply. So demand from, the investors, I would say, and then the supply of companies. And where CIIP has been working on is to provide case studies to actually showcase how companies can get started, what they should be doing, and also showcasing how investors can actually make money on this approach. So we do two things. The other thing that we do is also to lay groundwork and do our own primary research. Because as I mentioned, it is very damaging to the industry if you start to do impact washing. So there is a need for data. And yesterday we just launched our report on financial inclusion outcomes. And the focus there is really on outcomes where you do need to see what is the actual result to the end customer and measure those. And that's quite crucial, and not just the outputs.
Yeah, indeed. So that's why I'm so excited to see more and more startups actually having some deep technology or data rather than just doing good things, right? That's very different from 6 years ago. And then all those technology will combine together, and then we can see meaningful outcomes and achieving KPI tangibly. That's why investors will be more willing to invest, because maybe a long time ago people say something good, but it could be scientifically no evidence, and sometimes a good story, but actually nothing inside. Unfortunately, I have seen many such kind of little bit of fake impact investment in the past, but now it's becoming a technology advancing. Sometimes using a blockchain, for example, technology to record carbon capture process and also actually numbers, and then people cannot change. That's why people can believe it. And then third party will audit it, and then that's why investor will be okay to invest, right? So all those kind of things will be now kind of coming together. That's actually a big difference, if I compare 10 years ago.
No, thank you, Sustion and Dawn, as well. I know, Dawn, you mentioned earlier, there's need for measuring impact and need for data as well. So how do impact investors then define and measure impact?
There are a number of ways, and it really depends, and there's actually quite a number of standards which are already converging. So if you go to the Global Impact Investing Network, they use the IRIS Plus metrics. So select your SDG, and there are a number of metrics that pop out, right? If you use, let's say, there are other alternative methods in terms of, you could use B Corp as one way, on your impact journey, before you get into real classification of which exact metric. So it really depends. But the other thing that is crucial is that you have to measure the entire life cycle, right? So this is not only what you do, but the entire cost, the energy that goes into this. So what is the additionality, right? So that is actually quite crucial as well, right? Not just the metric, but the entire life cycle cost.
Thank you, Dawn. And for us to share, I mean, let's go back a little bit and talk about innovation. You know, I guess in April, it was announced that the Edge of has been established, founded by you and Taizo-san. And this really is that pan-Asian ecosystem for pioneering startups. So tell us what actually led to the strategic acquisition and how you envision the Edge of to contribute to the climate innovation space. And also maybe also comment a little bit on what Dawn mentioned in terms of measuring the entire life cycle and how the Edge of will help for that.
Yeah, so actually I came to Singapore 6 years ago, and then maybe 6 years ago, maybe too early to think about pan-Asia kind of ecosystem or maybe some platform, because each country has different stages and also a different culture, of course, a different mode. But I have seen kind of the common sort of a trend, like for example, people think about more sustainability is a common theme, right? Doesn't matter from where, Indonesia or maybe Thailand or Japan, common theme. And then, of course, they are trying to solve the same issues. In that sense, of course, different maybe background, but I think that the goal could be the similar and the same. That's why it's quite easy to understand the cross-border basis, pick and choose the right solution. Maybe solution will be coming from US or maybe from Indonesia and then apply to someone else, or vice versa. So such kind of a cross-border opportunity is becoming bigger and bigger. That's why we thought it could be a good chance to see more like a pan-Asia basis cross-border kind of a collaboration or cross-investment rather than just one-by-one country basis. So that's the intention of the, we established the company called The Edge of. It's a little bit weird name, right? The Edge of is coming from the kind of innovation would happen in between chaos and order. So in the edge of. So obviously, Singapore is kind of edge of, right? So edge of a developed country and those culture, and also a nearby emerging market, right? So that's why I would say Singapore is a good place to do this kind of the edge of activities. Maybe bring the technology and also innovation from developed countries and then apply to emerging market to make a leapfrog. And then if the leapfrog is a huge, actually return on investment will be huge, right? So the key is that applying deep technology and also advanced technology to emerging market to make a leapfrog, then I think it's a return on investment will be huge. And I have seen several cases already since we invested in this area more than 8 years. So that's one reason. And also, as we know, deep tech is not easy, right? Because we heard many questions, right? And then not easy to answer and also solve. And then the startup journey itself is very tough, but this sustainability and deep tech, journey is even tougher. So each stage is require different support. Of course, the seed stage, of course, money is important, but afterwards, some research support will be required because single one-two founder cannot solve everything. Some research partner will solve certain issues and also part of the issues, right, for the technology to improve. And then afterwards, people need to develop some prototype, right? But also very tough because small startup cannot fund easily and also don't know how to build a prototype. So prototyping partner should come in. Then afterwards, even harder, scalable challenge, right? We know huge CapEx is required. In that case, big CapEx supporter should come in, scalable partner should come in. So all those kind of the collective support is crucial to support such kind of a deep tech startup or sustainability startup. However, but it's not easy to make it happen because most of the cases, each startup is knocking the door 100 times to find the investors and supporters and advisors. So we like to address such kind of issue to harness like many people on the same community and platform, and then try to create a kind of good matchmaking in between investor, advisor, researcher, and also founder. That's kind of the second objective of the edge of concept.
Thank you so much, Sustion, and thank you for explaining, the whole idea and intention behind the edge of. Don, I would like to go to you on this. I guess Sustion did mention a couple of points there, in terms of creating that pan-Asian ecosystem, where, you see similar or a similar theme kind of startups and solutions come up from that because of the nature of the ecosystem that they're in. I wonder how CIIP as well is taking this approach to the Asian ecosystem in terms of impact investment.
So what we've done is that we've actually sponsored UNDP SDG Impact to create investor maps for each of the countries in ASEAN. The next stage is actually to identify and then work, and as Sushi-san was saying, to match investors together with these companies and in every single country. The other things that we realize is that you need scale. And sometimes startups do benefit from actually working together rather than separately. Yeah. Especially in this current year where, venture money is actually very tough to get. Everyone is in a risk-off mode. And there I would also say that there is also a opportunity for philanthropists, family business money to actually come and step in and do something else slightly different in terms of venture philanthropy, which is very much needed and could be catalytic at this stage.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to go to the questions right now because I'm seeing quite a few interesting questions come up on a Slido link. So one of them is, seems like there's a lot of talk but limited action. How can more concrete action be taken? And what are skill sets that impact investors need? Don, I would like to pose that to you. Are there specific skill sets that impact investors need?
I think in terms of specific skill sets, yes it is, because you're looking at a double bottom line. You're looking at not just the financial due diligence, you're also looking at the impact due diligence. So there are specific skill sets that are needed. We do have training materials and we're developing training courses for both companies as well as investors to develop this. This again is crucial. You do need discipline and the courage to actually, be very honest to yourself and to your companies, because otherwise you go down the slippery slope of impact and washing and marketing spiel.
Yeah, thank you.
So yes, you do need that.
Sustion, I guess for you as well, I wanted to turn to you in terms of, kind of success stories that you've seen from outside of Asia and how you've taken that and kind of put it into this pan-Asian or Singapore context and how you intend to build on that.
Yeah. Well, before that, maybe I add on
ahead,
that question. Then, not skill set, but most important thing is that to think about kind of beyond conventional solution, right? Because most of the people try to improve current solution or current way of thinking. Then it's not exactly innovation. Then impact will be not so huge. Then return will be mediocre. So I haven't seen many investors try to take a safe way, which is basically, oh, I heard that, that's why I want to invest. But in that case, maybe not innovative enough, and then maybe a startup will be falling down. And then versus, never heard before, of course, risk is there, but all those, impact investment, huge return will come from such kind of the novel idea, never heard before. That's why investors need to have some sort of courage to challenge beyond the current conventional way of thinking. And also long term, because it takes usually more than 10 years to get return versus other investment like real estate investment or maybe a conventional startup investment can be 5 years, 7 years. But this sustainability investment should be more than 10 years. So need to wait for that's kind of a long-term basis.
For sure. And I'd like to just hold on to that thought for a moment, but I realized that we need to put up the popular vote poll. So Ben, if you could put up the QR code, because people are just pinging me, and the top question here is actually when do we start voting? So I'm going to get people to start voting first because I think the judges are almost ready. But I guess with that, in terms of the innovation side of things, I know we've spoken so much about impact investing, but from the innovation ecosystem, what do you see as lacking in order to push investors into the impact investment mode?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, investment is, of course, a cash, but cash is, be honest, available many ways. Of course, at this moment, not easy to get. However, cash can get from anywhere. That's why additional support and also, the additional contribution is important. That's why it should not be just the financial investors. It's more like a business partner investors or research investors. So different kind of the investors should come in, right? Maybe sometime in kind basis, maybe for research support, and maybe in kind basis to support prototyping, right? So all those different kind of the investors should come in, not just the financial investors. And to be honest, financial investors sometimes don't understand technology itself. And then, but maybe research investor can understand the technology, then can share the knowledge, such kind of understanding to other investors, right? So in that sense, collaboration in between investors is also very important. Most of the cases, investors, wouldn't talk to each other sometimes, and in that case, it could not be collaborative, right? So that's why, especially for supporting sustainable startup or sustainability startup or deep tech startup, I think that's kind of the investor collaboration, and then diversified investor profile will be crucial to be success.
That is a good one. Thank you so much, Sustion. I guess on that point as well, we know that climate gap from investment is about 11.1 trillion from now till 2050, and the impact investing market is right now about 1.1 trillion. How do we get that to close the gap closer to where we need to be for climate investments? To Dawn first.
First of all, when you get into the $1 trillion number, it becomes academic, right? So I think it's the question right now is to educate everyone and get started. I think there is also a misconception that you need to be perfect before you get started. Unfortunately, we don't actually have time to have a perfectly all-rounded company. You do need to get started, and maybe it's to take baby steps first, right? There are the no-regret moves in terms of what you can do for impact. But do get started. And the good news is that you have very large mainstream investors already, which have raised large funds, and more coming on board, right? So TPG's impact slice is already 14 billion, right? So that's just one fund. So I think there's much more that can be done soon.
Thank you, Sustion.
Yeah, that's of course size-wise, maybe even bigger than that. But it's totally depend on the, again, technology advancement and also support the ecosystem. Otherwise, just investment will be going nowhere. That's why I think it's, again, not just a cash, but also ecosystem development simultaneously should be key, right, obviously.
I think on that point, you need manpower as well. Trained, and this is not just the C-suite, which is usually bought in. You do need to train the next level. Who's actually on the ground to implement this? Who is on the ground to actually implement the measurements, the training, and that's where I think CIIP is going to play a role, and we're going to do our little part.
Yeah, thank you so much. Ben, if we show the word cloud once again, please. I'm going to put the speakers on a little bit of a spot. It was a word cloud. I want you to pick out two words, one that describes how you think investors feel about impact investing right now today, and what you want investors to feel about impact investing in, say, 5-10 years. If there's any. I think they're all pretty...
Right now, some of them I would say are waiting for mainstreaming. In the future, and I think we're changing, optimistic and excited.
Thank you, Don. And for Sustion?
Yeah, I always, same thing, optimistic, excited, and also positive impact. That's always come together. So we have been investing the same more the last 8 years, but now more people are same kind of more. So that's why I'm so delighted, and especially to be here, because all of us are same kind of like-minded people.
Thank you so much. I think those are very hopeful words to almost wrap up the discussion. Two more from me, really. You've heard from our finalist teams present. What are your general one-sentence thought about that in terms of how you think this is going to contribute to the impact investment ecosystem or the innovation ecosystem?
I think it's wonderful in terms of seeing entrepreneurs explore and take a chance, and the new entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs to address this space is really really encouraging for the ecosystem. One word of advice is probably to be quite clear about the additionality, right, and how they can get to actually a path to profitability.
Thank you, Don. And Sustion, you can also add on the advice as well.
Yeah, well, I have seen a lot of great startup today, and also experienced founders, and also people are coming up, right? Because especially for sustainability or impact investment, it's not easy. That's why it's crucial to have a knowledgeable, experienced founder involved, together with the young, talented people. So, and then today I have seen such kind of combination from a startup profile and team, members. So that's why it's quite promising to me for such kind of startup.
Thank you so much, Sean and Sustion. I think we had such wonderful insight from you today. And for the teams here, the entrepreneurs and the startups, I hope you got good and valuable insights from both the very, very esteemed speakers here. So I think we're going to wait. The judges are walking back right now. They are very ready to announce the results. For those who have not put in the popular votes, please do take out your phones, flash, scan the QR code and do put in your votes for that, because that will count to a team winning a prize too. But in closing, we've covered really, really interesting insights and provoking thoughts, on the role of innovators and impact investors in realizing a sustainable transition. I'm sure you can all agree that today's discussion has really highlighted a vital role played by collaboration, innovation, and also purpose-driven, future-looking investments in shaping a more sustainable future for us. As innovators are developing and have developed solutions to address pressing social and climate issues, investors too are also recognizing the importance of aligning financial goals with societal and environmental well-being, all of which really give us the hope of driving closer towards a sustainable transition. On this note, we've come to the end of this fireside chat. Thank you once again for being such a great audience, and also thank you to our distinguished panelists, Don, and also Sushi, for your time and thoughts. Now, I think the judges... Now, I think the judges are right on their way back. Let's, again, for those who have not done the audience poll, please do so as to who you think will win TLC 2023. And while everyone takes this poll, I would like now to hand it over to Jessica. All right. Judges, welcome back into the room. And to our audience, thank you so much for being patient with us, and thank you again for that amazing panel discussion that we've had on accelerating a sustainable transition. Well, now we've come to the segment that we have all been waiting for. After the pitches that we've heard today, I'm sure all of you, as well as our judges, have some thoughts and feedback for our teams who will take the stage now. Can I invite the Food and Nutrition Track finalist members on stage? Please give them a round of applause. And now I'd like to hand it over to Anuj, who will give you a summary of the judges' feedback. Anuj.
Excellent. Thank you, participants. Thank you for very compelling pitches on trying to solve some of the biggest challenges that we face in the world of food, agri-food. I think, first of all, I think the team from Temasek Foundation and our co-organizer EcoBusiness chose 3 companies which really stack up very well with the Singapore food story. And because one of you is talking about sustainable proteins or alternate proteins, which is one of the legs of our Singapore food story. Another one is about aquaculture, Tiara, and aquaculture is obviously a very, very important part of how we want to grow our protein And then the third one is about controlled environment agriculture, whether it's vertical farms, greenhouses, and so on and so forth. So really, it covers all the three key bases, and you all have been looking at problems which are important problems to look into. So as I go into specifics, and I have collated the feedback from my fellow colleagues over here as well, let's start with Plantish. I think your pitch in summary is essentially growing tomatoes in vertical farms, short stature, using gene editing. I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea because you're using a technology which is going to be the technology of the future. You're focused on a high value crop, which is essentially allows you to have margins going forward. And you are looking at a solution which is relevant, at least in the Singaporean context. However, I think there are certain things that your pitch could have addressed better. I think the most important thing for me is that tomatoes have already, growing of tomatoes is fast moving into controlled environment in greenhouses. And in greenhouses, we have an extremely well-developed ecosystem with very high yields, high quality, good nutritional content, and so on and so forth. What was not very clear is why do we then need to move from greenhouses to vertical farms? And what is the differentiation that is going to be caused by doing that? And I think that's the part which was unclear from your pitch, and I think you should, going forward, address it very clearly. And what are you going to differentiate? Because the baseline is no longer open field, the baseline is greenhouses. But nonetheless, very creative, and certainly, we will need to develop multiple ways of growing tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and high-value crops in lit environments and greenhouse and vertical farms going forward. The second participant, Tiara, essentially oral vaccines or vaccines for aquaculture. And you went specific with vaccine for sea bass, oral vaccines, drop-in for the scale drop disease, which is obviously a big issue here in Singapore and certain parts of the country. I think what we all liked is you're looking at solving a significant problem, and the way I will define the problem is slightly different from how you did it. I think tropical aquaculture has been highly underinvested from a disease control perspective. And that's, whereas when you look at temperate aquaculture, obviously, the reason salmon is a $50 billion industry and tilapia is a low value fish and extremely small is because we have not invested in genetics and animal health for this sector. And therefore you're solving, an unaddressed problem for tropical fish. I know you mentioned, yes, we can do this for salmon and so on and so forth, but I would highly encourage you to stick to solving the problems that this region requires or the tropical region requires. I think the solution is a good solution. We know vaccines work. We all are vaccinated over here multiple times in the last several years. Whether it's peptide, RNA, mRNA, and so on and so forth. I think everybody has become a vaccine specialist in the years. And I think what stood out with both of you is your team chemistry. I think you built on each other's answers, and you were synchronized. And that was very good to see. And obviously when you are a startup, it's important the team comes along. I think in terms of the areas that the group here would like you to explain better would be the regulatory pathway and being able to get to regulatory approvals. Why would you be able to do it? If you have special access to the regulator, obviously you've been at it for a long period of time. And obviously the other part, which is very important in vaccines, is being able to get access to the virus itself. And sitting in Singapore here, we sometimes are limited because these diseases are happening everywhere in the world. So what's your infrastructure, what's your to be able to get some of those things is something that you could have explained better, but well done. I think the team from ProteoMax it's extremely clear. So first of all, you're trying to use a platform technology to develop proteins, so what was very clear, it's a platform technology that you are looking to develop. And this platform technology today, you talked about the use case being superior egg proteins and being able to replace animal agriculture with high quality proteins which are solving, giving full nutrition that an egg does, right? So that was very clear. I think it was very clear that your platform is based on deep science and high conviction on what you want to do. I think what was very clear is you are leveraging the ecosystem that we have created in Singapore quite effectively with Scale Up Bio, with Narasa, and so on and so forth. So you're plugging in as much as possible, which is very good. I think in terms of the areas that you have to look out for is you are in a very crowded space. There are a lot of companies who are trying to do that, trying to do what you are doing. And they have been at it for the last 5-10 years with significant amount of capital as well. So what is really the differentiation that you were building in was not very clear. And therefore what advantage does what you are doing does to what others are doing in the sector has to come out more closely, more clearly from our perspective. Also, I think the use case of eggs is relatively narrow, and within that use case, only through the questioning did we kind of come to that the differentiation is because you're also producing the egg, the yolk part, not just the egg white part. So I think I would certainly think that how you pitch what you are doing can be significantly something more direct with highlighting your technology platform and highlighting the differentiation that you get over there. But nonetheless, it was obviously very, very interesting for all of us to debate and discuss how we should go about looking at what you're doing, and you're all solving different problems. So congratulations, and obviously be at it. It's a long journey.
Thank you so much to the judge for giving us our feedback, and thank you finalist teams. If I can just invite you to sit back down. And now the climate change track. Finalist teams, please come on stage. Thank you, and Steve, please take it away.
I'm sure everybody is super excited just to catch a chase, right? And stop keeping up, build the suspension. But yeah, it's my 4th year as a judge, and every year it just gets harder and harder. I think the quality of the entrance this year was amazing. The 600 entrants down to the last 5 on the stage in front of me. So well done. You made our job extremely hard as well. We had long debates next door. Didn't quite end up having fights, but it wasn't far off. We were very impressed by all the proposals, innovation, and I guess also excited about the prospects of big scale megaton abatement and carbon capture. So in terms of individual companies, so Carbex, what we really liked was your CCU solution, which we felt had application not only globally, but also very applicable to Singapore and Singapore-specific issues in terms of the emissions that we're trying to reduce here, but also in terms of raw material and concrete and cement demand as well. I guess the key questions for us are a little bit around competition, and particularly in terms of other players like Blue Planet, as well as a lot of the more advanced green concrete and green cement companies as well. And we're probably a bit more advanced in terms of commercializing and going to market. In terms of the Nika team, Lawrence and Johan, I mean, again, as I said before, if you can unlock funding to blue carbon to protect mangrove forests and also regenerate mangrove forests, that'd be fantastic.
And clearly you have a scalable tool which can significantly increase productivity, reduce some of the costs, particularly essentially around the manual field visits, and also provides a really high level of granularity and looks really user-friendly as well. Jessica, you start.
I'm not doing anything.
I guess the questions for us were really a bit around defensibility and also scalability. In other words, how big could this become, and how would you go away from moving from a one-off transactional MRV model to a recurring revenue way, become indispensable to a project developer or someone in that ecosystem? Sustion, the Sustion team, clearly. Synthetic fuels is an exciting growing area of focus for in the climate tech space globally, and clearly you've done a great job in terms of not only patent filing but also some of the pilots in progress, which was reassuring and built credibility for us. But I guess more importantly, in the case of the Liveability challenge, was the applicability to Singapore and the ability or potential ability to mitigate up to 20% of our greenhouse gas emissions here. I guess that the question marks for us were really around you're in a competing space with demand for H2 as a fuel stock to achieve what you're trying to do, but also in terms of taking this and scaling this. It wasn't quite clear in terms of how you go from the lab and actually do this at scale, not just in Singapore, but also on a more global basis as well. In terms of Seaforestation, Christopher, and I guess Brian, if he's online here, what we particularly liked was the fact that it was like 3 Ps. The ability to impact planet, particularly greenhouse gas emissions and sequestration, but also the health of the oceans and also biodiversity. The impact on livelihoods, particularly smallholder farmers and fish farmers and local communities. But also the ability to build a profit and demonstrate already that you can start to commercialize. And so clearly you've demonstrated some traction of going from an idea from that TRL1 to TRL9 and starting to commercialize over the last few years, and essentially in a very large growing seaweed market with various channels and demand for seaweed as an input source. I guess what was less clear, and perhaps is still less clear to us, is a little bit around the defensibility. How do you scale this and prevent other people from copying the idea, and how you do that at scale to reach your 30 million revenue aspiration? The Seabound team, I'm not sure if Alicia is online at all. Is she? Oh, I don't know. Seabound is clearly tackling a really, really big problem in terms of emissions from a really hard to abate sector in the maritime industry. There are a whole amount of regulatory pressure, company pressure and fund pressure driving a lot of investment in this space. And so we really like the fact that you're taking a different approach, which is separating the onshore from the offshore and taking this kind of circular closed loop direct air capture approach. Which offers potentially a fast transitional approach to reducing emissions. We also like the fact that it's very applicable again to the Singapore case and in our maritime and shipping hub here. The question marks for us were really around the logistics and infrastructure required to build from getting the pebbles onto the boat and off the boat and processing them and then back on the boat again. It's not a boat, right? It's a ship, right? Onto a ship. Which we felt might limit maybe the adoption, slow the adoption down, but also maybe limit some of the routes that would make this cost effective. We had a couple of questions around sort of defensibility from an IP point of view, but also with the ongoing investments in other fuels like methanol and ammonia and hydrogen, how would that play a role to delaying the adoption of Seabound solution? But overall, fantastic, and as I said, you made our job very, very hard. So I'm sure you don't care about any of this, you just want to hear the result, right? I guess on that note, I think we're handing it back to Jess.
Thank you, teams. Can I just get you to take a seat? So, yeah, please take a seat. Thank you. Okay, apologies for the rustling of the microphones. There's some phantom person going on in here trying to disrupt the unveiling of the winners. We have now reached the moment that we're all waiting for. Just taking a moment here to acknowledge the lovely trophies that have been handmade for the finalists today, handcrafted by one of our local artists from local company 25 Degree Woodworks. The rechargeable LED trophies are made from aged wood offcuts from locations all around Singapore, so you then don't get more circular than this. The light bulb, a main feature of our trophies, represent human ingenuity and the breakthrough technologies that exemplify the spirit of TLC. So now first up, just to warm all of you up, we're going to unveil the results of the popular vote as voted by you, our audience, not the judges. And so if I can get it on standby, the winner of the popular vote for food and nutrition goes to Tiara. It's the finalist trophy. That is that one. Congratulations, Tiara, on winning the popular vote. Thank you. Everybody back down. All right, and now we have the popular vote winner for the climate change track. And the popular vote for the climate change track goes to Seaforestation by 1%. Huge congratulations to you for winning the popular vote. Yes, we're going to take a quick picture. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to go into our investment prizes today. And moving on to the first award today, we will be presenting a 100,000 investment by Peak Bridge in the food and nutrition track. I'll now like to invite Yoni on stage to present the award. Actually, if you could come this way, we'll pass you the award. All right. And the Peak Bridge prize, I've got so many envelopes. I need to get the right one here. And the Peak Bridge prize goes to Tiara. Congratulations, Tiara. Thank you. All right, now we've come to the second prize from Steve Malowich at Planet Rise. Can I invite Steve up on stage for his prize of $100,000? Yeah. So Steve has very excitedly told me that he's got an investor that has matched his funding. So his funding is actually $200,000. All right, and the winner of the $100,000 investment, or $200,000 investment from Planet Rise goes to Seaforestation. Huge congratulations. Thank you very much. Huge congratulations again. And now we have the prize from James Tan at Quest Ventures for a $100,000 investment. James, can I invite you on stage? Okay, and the winner of the $100,000 investment from Quest Ventures, who was supposed to invest in food, but is now changing his category, is going to be investing to Seaforestation. Congratulations! All sorts of surprises today. Thank you very much. And now we have Kathleen Tan from Rumour Group for the $100,000 investment as well. And can I invite Kathleen on stage? Okay, and the winner of the $100,000 investment from Rumour Group goes to Seaforestation. Obviously very popular today. Thank you very much. Okay, and now the last of the strategic investment prizes. Can I invite Mike Lim from Tiara up on stage to give his $100,000 investment in the climate change track? Okay, and the winner of the investment prize from Triarc goes to Sustion. Congratulations, Sustion. We get you to stand here, take a picture, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so we've now come to the most highly anticipated moment. And actually, departing from all our previous editions is two highly anticipated moments because we have $2 million prizes this year. I'd now like to invite Mr. Lim on stage for the unveiling of the 2023 TLC winner in the food and nutrition track. Mr. Lim. You can see the trophies get bigger and bigger, but the judges have to carry heavier and heavier trophies. Okay, now for the drum roll, please, for this $1 million prize. The Liveability Challenge 2023 grand winner for food and nutrition goes to Tiara. Huge congratulations to Tiara. Mr. Lim, stay on stage. We'd like to invite Mr. Lim to give a few words on why Tiara has won this track.
Well, I think hearing the comments from Anuj, you probably have guessed what you want. You are addressing an important problem in our fishery industry, fish farmers, and that is disease-related mortality. So we like your platform that produces vaccine that is RNAi and peptide-based vaccine. But more importantly, low cost and orally delivered, which makes it very easy and very effective for you to do that. And if we can reduce this mortality rate, we're talking about 50 to 70% more in output, and that helps our food security. So for all these reasons, the judges has decided that you should be awarded the $1 million prize for the Liveability Challenge 2023, the food category. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lim. And Rashida, we'll give you a few seconds as well to give some words. Yes.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the recognition. And when we started out, like, aquaculture was not considered like a very hot field to be in, but we persisted. Everyone told us to go do alternate proteins, which we can do, but we realized that the problem is here and this is going to feed the world. So thank you for the recognition, and we hope to bring a meaningful change. And I would like take this opportunity to thank the great team at Tiara, without which none of this would have been possible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. May I invite you to take your seats? Okay, Mr. Lim, you have to do double the work this year. And I need you to stay on stage because now we're going to have the final winner for the climate change track. And can we give Mr. Lim the grand prize? Okay, now can we have the drum roll? The Liveability Challenge 2023 grand winner for climate change goes to Sustion. Huge congratulations to Sustion. Mr. Lim, please share your thoughts as to why Sustion has won this award.
95% of Singapore's energy generation comes from the combustion of LNG. So Sustion's solution addresses a very major problem for us. And their promise is that potentially it can reduce CO2 emission for Singapore by 20% and produce a domestic substitute for imported LNG. Is very appealing to us. It represents for us one pathway to reach climate target, net zero climate target. And also, I think the judges like your very clear business model in terms of how you will scale and commercialize. And for these reasons, they have selected you as the winner for the Liveability Challenge 2023 decarbonisation track. Thank you.
Well, we very much appreciate this recognition, and thank you very much. Again, all our life, we want to really make a difference in the CO2. We have worked on a number of technologies, and when we found this opportunity and understanding of the unique geological and geographical situation with Singapore, where there is a large petrochemical and refining complex, and highest per capita CO2 emissions because of this manufacturing. We were just trying to figure out what is the unique solution where we can do something and also create a business opportunity. I hope we can meet that challenge, and we appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the teams. So thank you, Mr. Lim, and to all the teams for your prizes. And also, I want to say huge congratulations to all our finalist teams. The fact that you've made it here as one of the finalists from over 600 solutions really is a really remarkable achievement. We also have many, many other investors in the room, and actually many of them have reached out to us to actually ask for them to meet all of you. So we'll be very happy to facilitate those conversations after this. This is only the beginning, and I'm sure you'll be attracting a lot more investments beyond those awarded this afternoon. I wanted to thank all of you who've joined us here this afternoon. I know that it's been a power-packed, really fun afternoon, but it was quite long. You stepped through all the pictures, and there was a lot of amazing content and knowledge that was shared in this room today. So thank you for those who are also joining us online and from the different time zones that have joined us all over the world. Now that we've come to the end, I'd like to say a few thank yous. To our judges, obviously, thank you for being with us and for providing us with your knowledge and experience and for walking the talk by putting capital into these projects. The event would also not have been possible without the support of our amazing partners, more than 70 organizations from across the world who have been part of our journey. Most importantly, to Temasek Foundation, a huge thanks for your vision and your leadership for this important initiative. And also thank you to the Singapore Food Agency for being the co-presenter in the food and nutrition track. To our strategic partners, PigBridge, Planet Rice, Quest Ventures, Roma Group, and Trirec, as well as our challenge partners. And obviously, it's too many for me to name all of them, but you're all very well thanked. And also our outreach partners for 2023. I'd also like to express my gratitude to the Temasek Foundation and Eco-Business team and the production crew who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure that this goes smoothly. And I also wanted to mention thanks to a special person whose birthday happens today, and that's Li Lang from Temasek Foundation. Huge happy birthday from all of us, Li Lang. Our global quest to drive impact and to find the best sustainability ideas will continue, so do keep them coming. We'll be sending you a post-event survey, so please do share your feedback with us and help us to spread the word on TLC by posting to your networks with the hashtag TLC2023 and hashtag Ecosperity. One small note, please return your lanyards to us because we always reuse them, and trade your lanyards for drinks at our networking session outside. Please look out for the next edition of the Liveability Challenge. And for those joining us in person, we will now be adjourning to networking with cocktails and canapes. So please do join us. Till next time, see you then. Can we get the finalist teams and strategic judges and Temasek Foundation on stage, please? Strategic judges, please come on stage. Finalist teams, can you please all come on stage as well? Finalist teams, everyone please come on stage. Please come on stage.